Hello there. I'm just making a video to rank all of the new subclasses in Tasha's Cauldron of everything. I'm mostly going to be doing this sort of based on the mechanics of the class, as opposed to like the thematic or how cool they are, things like that. But that's also going to include things like how well the theme was executed. So, pretty obvious disclaimer, but all of these are brand new, so I haven't really actually played with them. But I think I've got a pretty good grasp of how the mechanics interact with each other and how effective they'll be. I'm mostly ranking them based on how they are compared to the other subclasses in the class. There's some slight exceptions to that. I'll talk about that when I get to like the monk and things like that. But it's generally pretty consistent with that. This could be changed a lot. I might have missed like certain feat or one of the new spells or like some of the new race or ways you can use races with these classes that I didn't quite realize. Makes them a lot stronger. I'll just be adding some timestamps down below for every single class. So if you're looking for a specific subclass, you can just look down below and you can just click on that and it'll take you right to it. I'll also be making a much shorter video, just really quickly running through everything. How I'm going to rate it is pretty much like B. I want to be the average. It's what you expect, generally, from the class. As high as S tier is pretty much phenomenal. Either like the best or one of the best, like in the same bracket as the best of the class. And as low as like a D is pretty poor, but still totally playable. And then anything below D is just straight up bad. Anyway, let's get to it. I'm also quite keen to do some like full level 20 builds. So if anyone's keen to see me go like from first level up, and just explore what some of these subclasses can do. So if there's any subclass in particular you want to see, just a single person just wanting that, I'll go ahead and do it. Yeah, just let me know in the comments. So first up, we've got the Armorer. It's an Artificer subclass, and Artificers rely a lot on their subclass. Like the base Artificer doesn't really have any defined niche that it can do, especially in combat, round by round. So it needs a pretty solid subclass in order to be effective. Thankfully, it does have two very solid ones, the Battlesmith and the Artillerist. So looking at how the Armorer compares, it does play quite a bit like the Battlesmith. It's like it's tankier, but then it also doesn't have the Steel Defender, and there's definitely quite a lot of other stuff later on. But yeah, let's just get into it. So obviously you get your heavy armor proficiency. That's that'll get you like solid on AC. At base, it's not really going to be any more than what the Battlesmith is getting with medium armor, or anyone else really, in terms of AC. But later on, you'll get a couple more. And the spells, I'm a big fan of the spell list. In particular, Hypnotic Pattern, Greater Invisibility, and Wall of Force are all superb spells. You'll get a lot of use out of all of them. All the blasts are solid. You get some good defensive stuff like Mirror Image. Yeah, all of these really solid. So looking at the types of armor you can choose between the Guardian and the Infiltrator. So the Guardian is sort of your melee. It's tankier. You'll see you get some temporary HP, and that's something you can do all the time. So you can get some temporary HP that's equal to your level in the class. So that's kind of effectively bringing you up one die class. So going from like a D8, for instance, to a D10 with how much temporary HP you've got. But you can also do it at base twice, but then that scales with your proficiency bonus. So it's almost like you effectively got a D12 in your hit dice in terms of like average HP, and then later on it just gets more and more and more because you can use it all the time. The gauntlets, they're melee damage, and it's a D8 plus intelligence, which is pretty standard. It's what you get with like a rapier or something like that. But also it has the added advantage of giving disadvantage on attack rolls against things other than you. So that pretty much discourages whatever you are attacking from attacking anyone else, which is what you want as a tank. It's a really good tanking ability. In contrast, the Infiltrator, you'll be dealing quite a lot more damage. You'll see here it does, it's ranged as well. So it's kind of like shooting blast. This is probably more like Iron Man than the other one, if that's sort of the build you're going for. So you can deal a d6 lightning damage, like a hand crossbow or a short bow, but you can deal an extra d6 once per turn, which is pretty solid. And also you get an increased movement speed and advantage on stealth checks. So the Infiltrator is really, really nice for like infiltration. Yeah, and also you can choose which armor type you have at the end of a long rest, shorter long rest. And so, you know, if you know that you're going to be needing stealth, it can be quite nice just to switch into Infiltrator. Yeah, fifth level get extra attack. Obviously that keeps you up with all the other martials. Notably, it's you know, most subclasses that get extra attack, it's at 6th level. This one's at 5th level, so you don't have that level where you're lagging behind. But also, the other marshals get a lot more abilities that allow them to be dealing damage with weapons and things like that. Whereas you don't really get any of those. You do have your like infusions and things like that, so you can upgrade your weapons. But I don't think it's enough to keep you in line. And at this point, you're kind of like a tankier battlesmith, but you don't have your Steel Defender, which is a really big deal because that's like pretty much the main draw of the battlesmith. And the amount of extra tankiness isn't really that big of a deal. You're not going to be dealing more damage. It's yeah, I think at this point it's quite a bit below the battlesmith, whereas it's also filling a pretty similar niche. At level 9 you get your armor modifications, which I think it's quite weird that before this point you couldn't have treated the different parts of your armor as separate places for the infusions. If I was a DM running with someone who was playing an armorer, like it's their point of the subclass, so I'd absolutely let them before this point. I definitely don't think it's overpowered or broken because looking at the infusions, you don't get a hell of a lot of good ones. But the main thing of this feature is that you get an extra 2 infusions that you can have on at a time, both of which have to be part of your armor. So that does mean that you get a lot more like infusions that you can be buffing yourself with, which should like is the saving grace of the armorer. I'll talk later. I think it's still got problems, but yeah. And then later on you get your perfected armor. And so with your capstone, it does bring a pretty good buff to your attacks and things like that. So the reaction to pull-in's quite nice. It can have some current control effect, especially if you're pulling it away from someone that's squishier in your party. Can bring it to you. That's quite nice. And getting the extra attacks, so it's decent. And with the Infiltrator, you get the You get it has disadvantage on attack rolls against you, so that's one thing. It's like you're not tanking here. You're encouraging it to attack things other than you, in which case it can attack squishier party members and things like that. And also get some extra damage. So at this point, we're at 15th level, and we're versing some pretty high level enemies with some really interesting abilities. And the damage you'll be dealing in combat is just pretty pitiful compared to anyone else that's actually like designed to be dealing damage. And your tanking abilities just haven't kept up at all. And I think that's a lot of the problem with this subclass is that all the abilities are solid and they fit quite thematically, but they're just not potent enough that you can remain competitive, keeping going up. So looking at some of the infusions you can grab, first of all, I'd recommend not getting Arcane Propulsion because there's a lot of redundancy with the abilities you already get, and even then the abilities weren't that great. You're barely getting anything from it. I might consider Armor of Magical Strength. Pretty much lets you use your intelligence instead of your strength for like strength rolls and things like that. It's pretty niche, but it can be quite cool. It can feel like great. It feels like you've got these really strong armor. So enhanced weapon and enhanced defense are pretty much staples. I'd absolutely recommend them. Otherwise, you're just dealing nothing. There's no point. And also Mind Sharpener is a pretty good one for your helmet. Yeah. Looking at multi-classing, I thought there were some interesting ones. Bladesinger is a weird one that could actually work quite well. With Bladesinger, you're only allowed to wear light armor, so it would seem odd, but there's no reason you can't use light armor as your power armor. And then on top of that, you get this would be really focusing on tanking. With the wizard, you get access to shield, which is another thing that I feel like is quite lacking from this build as a tank. Like as a magical tank, you'd want to have shield, absolutely. So you can pick up that, and also the extra AC. Could maybe bring this into line. I don't know if it'll be particularly effective, but it would be fun. And a lot of wizard multi-classes would probably work pretty well. Some other good subclasses would probably be like the War Mage. Could get the initiative and the saves would be good for it. And Divination is always good with Portent. Yep. Alright, moving on. And so our first subclass, the Armorer, I'll be giving a B. I think the Artillerist and the Battlesmith are definitely like A tier. And it just isn't competitive with those two. But it's still alright, and I think it's a lot better than the Alchemist. Probably put C or D there. It's got some really interesting things. I can't imagine it would feel at all good playing at high levels. I feel like it would just completely fall off compared to everyone else around you. So yeah, it's definitely got some issues. So I can't rate it highly, but overall it's pretty good. And it's a really cool concept. It's a really nice, fun idea, right? Alright, moving on to Barbarians with the Path of the Beast. I was thinking if you wanted to play a werewolf, this is pretty much the perfect subclass for you. Get a lot of werewolf-like abilities, and then thematically it's perfectly there. So you pretty much get to choose between the three different kinds of natural weapons. You get a bite, a D8, but you also get to heal every time, once per turn, and that's your proficiency bonus. So it's not a big heal, but you can do it every round, so it really adds up. Alternatively, if you want to get more damage out, you can pick the claws, and comparing it with a greatsword, you'll be dealing a good bit more with the claws. At third level, you pretty much with a greatsword you get 2d6 plus your strength plus rage, which is 12 on average. whereas you get 2 attacks with the claws. You do have to hit both. I kind of just assume that you hit both, but you get 2d6 plus 10 because you get your rage and your strength bonus twice, so that adds up to 17. The gap becomes a little less at 5th level, getting 28 on average with a greatsword, whereas 31.5 with your natural weapons. Then the gap just widens as you go further on into the later levels. It's like 32 at 9th level with the greatsword, and 37.5 with the claws. That's pretty much because you're getting an extra attack, and every time you get an extra attack, you get to add your rage and your strength. So the gap becomes wider pretty much when your rage levels up, so it does more damage, and when your strength deals more damage. That causes the gap to get wider. Oh, I forgot to say, with those calculations, I was using at 3rd level, you had a 3 in strength, 5th level you had a 5, and 9th level you had a 4, and 9th level you had a 5. So the claws, you will, like, pretty much your best way to, if you want to focus on getting damage, that's your best way. The only problem is you can't actually get like magic items for your claws. Like you could get like a magic greatsword or a magic great axe or something like that. Whereas with claws, there is an item, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a +1 to natural weapons, which it would work for, but that's quite unlikely that your DM's just going to like have them out. You're a lot more likely to find the normal standard weapons. Alternatively, you also can grow a tail, and the tail adds your AC. It's a D8 that you can add as a reaction to your AC whenever you want. It does. You can also deal damage with it, and it has reach. If you want to be using reach, go ahead. But I'd actually recommend, if you are using your tail, grab like a greatsword or a great axe or whatever you want, or even like a shield, because it'll stack with your AC from the tail, because you'll just get more damage from that, and you always have the option of using it if you want the reach. But the D8 as a reaction on top of your AC is really solid. On average, a D8 is 4.5, so it's pretty much like the shield spell, but it's inconsistent. It can be as low as 1, it can be as high as 8. But the thing is, shield is a really, really good first level spell, but it's a spell, and it uses resources, whereas the tail, you can just use every round, as much as you want. So that's really, really solid. So this subclass tends to be quite good. It's kind of like versatile. It's a jack of all trades kind of thing, because like so 3rd level wise, you won't be dealing as much damage as like a Path of the Zealot would, and you won't be as tanky as Totem Barbarian that took like the resistance one, the Bear Totem. But you pretty much get the option of doing either playstyle, whichever one you go into, and then you can also heal with the bite. So you got a lot of options with this, which I think is quite cool. So moving on to the Bestial Soul. Adding magical damage is obviously quite important. Otherwise, this would be a really, really awful subclass, just because so many things get the magical resistance, or the resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. That's just kind of quite needed. And the different forms you can take are really nice, like mobility buffs. They're all really niche, like they're not going to come up all the time, but when they do, they'll be really, really good. Nothing too crazy at this level, but also pretty much all Barbarian subclasses don't get anything amazing at 6th level. So with Infectious Fury, the DT is based on your Con mod, which is probably going to be your second highest. It's not going to be massive, but it should be pretty solid. And a Whiz save is usually a pretty good save to target. Having to force another creature to attack
one of its friends can be really, really solid, um, depending on who's using the attack. And it is just one attack, so if it's got like multi-attack, you're only going to be able to do one, because it uses reaction. The 2d12 psychic damage is nice damage added on. Nothing amazing at 10th level, but it's solid. That's 13 damage on average. So it'll obviously add up. You don't get to use it all the time. It's only your proficiency bonus, which is I think 4 at this point. Yeah, 4. And it'll eventually get up to 6. That's actually one thing I've noticed. A lot of abilities are based on your proficiency bonus in this book, which wasn't too common in other books. It's interesting. So yeah, just for when those come up. I guess it's kind of like a slow scaling, but eventually scales pretty high, typically, depending on what you're getting from it. But yeah.
So I think I'd probably like to see a bit more versatility with the earlier abilities. Like, you should be able to choose like which one you get to use each round. Maybe not right at 3rd level, but later on, something like part of Infectious Fury might be that you should be able to change after each round or something like that. But even then, it's still quite good. I think it doesn't get nearly as much as something like a Totem Barbarian might or like a Zealot. But it's about in line with all the other Barbarian subclasses. And so, I think it deserves another B. It's nothing incredible. I think it's higher than the armor as well. Nothing incredible, but quite solid all round. It has the same problems as every other barbarian that at high levels you're not going to be dealing that much damage. But that's more of a barbarian problem than the beast mode problem. It still has like a lot of scaling that it can do. Yeah, anyway, let's move on to the wild magic barbarian. Now, the path of the wild magic barbarian, I think this is a super interesting subclass. It's probably one of my more favorite subclasses that have been added. It's got like a really unique mechanic that I'll get into in a minute. But it also has a lot of problems that I'll also talk about. Like this has the potential to be the coolest barbarian, but I'll get into it later. So magic awareness is pretty much like a action detect magic. You'll absolutely find plenty of times to use this. It's really cool. And it's really nice. Nothing defining or anything like that, but like it's if you've ever played with that invocation from a warlock that lets you have like at will detect magic, having it as an action as opposed to like a ritual just makes it so much nicer to use. Even if you only get a limited amount and it only lasts for a turn, it's just really nice. So the main draw of the Wild Magic Barbarian is Wild Surge. So whenever you rage, you pretty much get a random effect from this table here, and they're all really cool effects. It's not like the Wild Magic Sorcerer, where there's like some bad ones, good ones, and things like that. These are all good effects that give you something interesting to do in combat, pretty much always. So like this top one gives you some extra hit points and things like that, and deals some damage to a wide area of people. One of my favorites is this teleport one. Every single turn, as a bonus action, you get to teleport 30 feet. So it's like a Misty Step, which is a good 2nd level spell that you get to use every round for free. That's really cool. My favorite is it's the one that causes blindness. Oh, it's a. Oh, okay. These come in later. So you have a chance to blind everyone every turn. I think that's quite solid. That will always be useful. Blinded is quite a debilitating
condition, and you just get a lot of chances to do it. But yeah, every single one of these, I think it's so cool because every single combat you've got something new to play with, and you can't really expect what it will be, but it will be useful no matter what it is. And so you've got to it actually ends up being quite tactical. You've got to figure out the best way to use this ability that's just been like thrust upon you. And they're all really interesting. The table on D&D Beyond, I think, is different than the one I had in the book, the physical book. It's confusing. Anyway, doesn't really matter because it's all the same chances. But you also notice, like, with a lot of the damaging ones, you get like a D6 damage, and these all happen on a bonus action. D6 damage, the D12 you don't get to do every round, but it starts at the start and things like that. And so D6 damage here. I'll start talking about it a lot later. This is really, really, really solid at 3rd level. Probably if I was going to play a low-level Barbarian, this is the subclass I'd pick, because it's really, as I said, it's really interesting. It gives you a lot to do. But later on, as I'll talk about, there's nothing that scales this, and a lot of your later abilities rely on it, but it doesn't make it better, it just makes it more controlled and versatile. All of these abilities are good at 3rd level. They're good probably even 5th, 6th level, but getting higher than that, they just don't add up to what other classes will be getting, and just can't be competitive with the kind of creatures that you'll be fighting. Yeah. Bolstering magic is one that doesn't benefit this, but it's really cool. It's kind of like you get to give someone, it's like Bardic Inspiration Light with a D3, and they get to do it all the time. Well, you wouldn't use a D3, you'd use a D6, and then just half of it. But the best part of this is rolling a D3, and a creature gets to regain a spell slot up to that level, which is crazy. You get a number of times equal to your efficiency bonus, and at this point it's 3. So at 6th level, we'll be able to give a mage 3 3rd level spells back. What they'll do with those 3rd level spells is really, really good most of the time. So this is a really strong ability. The problem is, it's not going to feel like it's you that's making the benefit that happens. Like say your wizard runs out of spell slots, and then you use this, and he gets a 3rd level spell slot back, and later on a fireball like wipes out, like 10 little enemies or something like that. That's massive, and it's really cool. But that's like the wizard's moment. It's not your moment. So yeah, you're not gonna feel like it's you that's contributing. So you'll feel weaker than you are to the party, I guess is the point I'm trying to say. But it's strong. So Unstable Backlash pretty much lets you choose your effect from the wild magic table more. So yeah, every time you take damage, just fail that saving throw, which will be a lot because you're a barbarian and you're getting attacked all the time. You can reroll the magic table. So this is even cooler because you get a new effect every round that you can use. It does let you use it, whatever the effect is, as a reaction, so you get more uses of it. But it's not going to be anywhere near enough to make them like as significant as they should be at this point. And at 14, it lets you roll twice and pick the effect, and if you roll the same number, you get to choose it. So I think, again, adds more reliability to it. But the thing is, even if you had both of these abilities a little bit earlier, I think these effects just aren't good enough at this level to be strong enough to keep building off with the subclass features. Even if you can pick exactly what you want every turn, I still think you'll still feel quite lackluster to everything else. You don't get to pick whatever you have every turn. It's random. Yeah, I would suggest if you are wanting to take this to a high level, you talk to your DM. Try it first because I haven't play tested this, so it might be a lot better than I'm giving it credit for, not realizing certain interactions and things like that. But I just don't see it being that way. So I'll talk to your DM, see if you can get scaling. I think you could literally like double the dice at level 10 maybe, and do something as dramatic as that, and it'll still be a little on the underpowered side. And that's kind of what I'd recommend if you're like buffing classes. You want to buff them to the point that they're just under where they could be, instead of right there, because then that can lead to shitty things anyway. And then like giving little other effects like the flowers and vines, make it so it's like 30 feet or something. Things like that. Give little, well, maybe not little, decent buffs to all of them, and just give it something extra later on, because they're not enough by themselves at this point in time. Or, another interesting thing I was thinking is you have, with you're rolling twice, instead of choosing which one, you actually get both. I think that wouldn't be overpowered, that would still, but really interesting and cool. And like, as a bonus action, you can do both. Yeah. So that pretty much sums it up. Yep, that's all I wanted to say. It's, so, I think it's quite strong at low levels. If you're only playing to like level 6 or 7, I'd give it a B, maybe even a low A. But if I'm judging it by all levels of play, I think it's definitely as low as a C. Which is unfortunate, but for like such, it's a really cool subclass. I think it's awesome, but it just doesn't fit mechanically.
Just as a side note, I forgot to talk about how important, about how free bonus actions are theoretically for barbarians, because in the base class there's no bonus actions, so it's pretty free. But the thing is, the best builds, as far as I know, for getting a good damage output is using Polar Master and Great Weapon Master, and using the bonus action attack from Polar Master to get more attacks, and then also more strikes from Great Weapon Master. So you do forego that move, that build, if you want to go with the wild magic barbarian. So it's not free, it's pretty free, because a lot of people probably wouldn't be going for that anyway, but you probably wouldn't want to have a build based around bonus actions if half the time you'll be using your bonus action for something else. So yeah, just to note that it's not fully free, but it's pretty good. Okay, so the College of Creation Bard. This is probably my favorite subclass of all of Tasha's. It's really good, and it's really neat. It relies a lot on creativity. There's like a lot of really, a lot of the abilities aren't like just good because they do a lot of damage or something like that. You can actually like, there's so many like infinite uses for a lot of these abilities. You just have to think of them pretty much. Like it's a very creative based one. There'll be a lot of thinking outside the box. It also relies a lot on what your DM will let you away with. It's probably not one if you've got a pretty restrictive DM, the kind that like that isn't too interested in like the roll of cool and things like that. If you think your DM's pretty likely to block a lot of the creative uses, then it's probably not the subclass for you. So with motive potential, it adds different things depending on what someone's using your bardic inspiration for, and all of these I think are better than any other bardic inspiration modifying
um, thing that any other subclasses get. It's really strong. Aside from maybe the College of Eloquence, because they can use that to reduce saving throws on creatures, which is crazy. Um, but it's in that league. Like it's really strong. So you pretty much get like bardic advantage when someone rolls an ability check, like they roll two of your bardic inspiration and pick the highest. Um, that'll make it a lot more consistent. Um, yeah, much less likely to get those ones and things like that, where it feels like it doesn't really do much with the bardic inspiration. With an attack roll, this is really cool. So the Valor Bard, you can roll after you hit something. You can roll your bardic inspiration to add it to the damage, and that's just it. With this one, if you add the bardic inspiration roll to an attack roll, so more likely to hit, on top of that, everything within 5 feet of it, of the creature that did the attack, does a save and takes damage equal to the number rolled. So that within 5 feet. So that could be up to 8 creatures. That's probably not going to happen, but if that happens, you're dealing and say you roll like a 6 on the bardic inspiration dice. That's 6 times 8, thunder damage, provided they will fail the Constitution saving throw, which is usually a pretty bad one to target. But I mean, when you're getting like a free AoE on top of an already pretty good use for the bardic inspiration, like you'll hit creatures with it, especially if you got like 2 or 3. It's quite likely that at least one of them will fail, and that's good damage. And also, yeah, thunder's very rarely resisted, so that's quite nice. And on a saving throw, if you do it on a saving throw, you also get to add whatever you rolled as temporary hit points, plus your charisma modifier. So that'll, on average, be like 6 or 7, depending on your charisma. And then later it just gets better and better. So that's usually quite nice, especially when you're getting targeted with saving throws. It's usually when you need the HP. So yeah, that could be a really strong ability. At this point, it'll probably be in the higher end of bards if that's all it got at 3rd level. But it also gets Performance of Creation, which lets you create anything as long as it's medium at this level, which is quite big. That's like 5 by 5 by 10, I think, because we can be medium creatures and still get away with like being 9 feet tall with like furbolgs and things like that. That's quite big, and yeah, you can make anything. This is, as I was saying, one of those abilities that it really depends on how creative you are, but there's so many things you can do with this. A couple ones people might not have thought of is you can make pretty strong poisons with this. I haven't got like the poison table up or anything, but if you look at the Xanathar's poisons, there's like prices and how effective it is and things like that. You can make a big batch of these poisons, use them, and then because they disappear, it doesn't really matter. You've used the poisons and you just get free poisons pretty much. Also spell components that are consumed that are quite expensive. I'm not sure if that'll actually work. That's one a DM might reasonably shut down because it's consumed. But read is written. That shouldn't be the case. You should be able to use your the stuff you make from Performance of Creation for spell components. And then just a multitude of things. Like you always need things when you're adventuring, and you're like, oh shit, I should have picked up climbing tools or something like that. You can just make them. Yeah. There's also things like cages you can make. It is an unoccupied space that you have to make it, but you could make a cage, shove someone in, shut the door, and then lock it. All sorts of things. I wrote a couple other notes. It gets to large and huge, which is massive. I'm not sure if you'd be allowed to do this. It's an occupied space, but it doesn't say anything about not creating it in the air. Once you get up to like huge, a huge boulder is
20 foot by 20 foot, you know, something like that. How would a DM roll a huge boulder right landing on someone from 30 feet in the air? You know, that would be a ridiculous amount of damage. So, again, it really depends on. I think there's probably rules that should be applied to this that haven't been. But as written, it's really sick. Yeah. So at 6th level, animating performance, you target something large or smaller. So large is big again, like you can be something really big. And you animate it. I'll move on to the stat block below later, but one thing that I think it probably should have, it was probably an oversight, but these sort of abilities usually say that you can't target held things, whereas this doesn't. So it seems like you should be able to animate like an enemy sword or something like that, and just it doesn't get in a sword anymore. Things like that. There's all sorts of stuff that you could target. So even if the dancing item down here, stat block, wasn't good at all, this would still have plenty of uses. Just like animating objects is good. Especially large ones, like you will have uses for this all the time. But this dancing stat block is good. It's maybe not a ton of damage. I think it says you do this with your bonus action. Even if you don't, even if you just get it for free, like it's a 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus, which at 6th level is it's meaningful damage, but it's not like game changing. It also has an okay crowd control ability with irresistible dance, which like it reduces things around it by their movement speed by 10 feet, which definitely has its uses, like especially when you combine it with something like plant growth or difficult terrain or something like that. It'll make creatures a lot harder for creatures to move around. On top of that, its general stats are surprisingly high, like a +4 to strength, +2 to dex. Just getting it to your general skills, especially depending on what you animate, could totally come in useful. It's also decently tanky. 10 plus 5 times your bard level. That's probably kind of close to the number of hit points you'll have, and 60 natural armor across is also pretty decent. It's so yeah, if it takes attacks, it's fine, and that's attacks your party's not taking. So yeah, if you make it some kind of active target, that's pretty great. And a large item can have like positional bonuses if you're using a battle map. You can like have it block certain areas that enemies would use to get to you and things like that. So that's quite solid. I'm unsure if it gets things like opportunity attacks. I'd say no, because it would say reaction opportunity attack down here. Probably. So that one sort of depends. Depends how much it can control the area. And then moving on to Creative Crescendo. It's very aptly named. Pretty much this is a really crazy ability if you have the creativity to do it. I don't know what come to my head, like sort of stuff before, but like I think as you play this class, you'll get a lot more feel for what it can do. And I think it's a lot more than even I realize. Yeah, like you can make, I think it was 6. It's your charisma modifier. Oh, only 5. Okay. But you'll have a 15 charisma at this point. You make 5 items pretty much at once with it, which is really friggin' cool. Yeah. So overall, I think this is easily our first S tier. I'm not sure if I'd rate it higher than the Eloquence Bard. I'd definitely rate it higher than all other bards, Lord Bard included.
I think I would rate it higher than the Eloquence Bard, but it's a lot more dependent on a lot of things, whereas the Eloquence Bard is just good. But yeah, it's a definite S tier, probably my favorite. Alright, so the Peace Domain Cleric. These clerics are kind of like all about fostering relationships, and I mean it's pretty self-explanatory, Peace Domain. So first off, looking at the domain spells, I'm a big fan of the spell list. I think clerics don't tend to have the best domain spells usually. They tend to be on the lower end and have quite a few spells that you're just not ever going to use. I think this one's really good compared to those. So yeah, some standouts to me. I love Rarest Telepathic Bond. You just notice it so much. If someone has it, they cast it as a ritual, get everyone in the party. It's just so nice throughout the day. If you've ever had it, you'll know what I mean. You don't think it comes up that often, but it does. Autolux Resilient Sphere is a great like panic, protect someone kind of spell. Greater Restoration, obviously good. I'm a big fan of Aid. I think actions are more free than bonus actions on a cleric, mainly because of Spiritual Weapon, and if you're already concentrating on something and don't want to cast another spell, which is quite often what you'll be doing, you'll just be doing a cantrip or a weapon attack, which is on your as your action, and that's usually less effective than your Spiritual Weapon. And if you've got multiple teammates down, just a single aid spell can bring up multiple of them. And obviously it scales really, really well. It's extra hit points. It's a really solid spell. And all of these spells, I think, are good spells that you'll find uses for. You get extra proficiency, which is good. I'm pretty sure Performance and Persuasion, you don't get either of those for in your cleric list, so that's an option if you wanted either of them. Emboldening Bond acts a lot like a Bless spell, but it doesn't require any concentration. And I think this is excellent. I think Bless is one of the best buffs at low level. You'd be so surprised how often it turns misses into hits. And to do this without concentration is awesome. Because that's the only reason Bless has stopped being used at later levels, is because you've got better things to concentrate on. Otherwise, I'd pretty much use it every combat. But you get to with this. It does only work once per turn. So later on when marshals get like extra attack and things like that, it won't be as good. But it's still will turn plenty of attacks, plenty of misses into hits. It's always a good spell to have. Balm of Peace is, I think, a really solid Channel Divinity. It's not amazing. You pretty much get some movement, up to your speed without provoking attack of opportunity. So that's really good if you're like in a bit of trouble. You don't get like heavy armor or marshals or anything as this character, so you don't really want to be close to things. And you can also use it to restore some HP to something, HP to someone. So it's a nice wee heal. It's 2d6 plus your Wisdom modifier. So that's quite solid, especially at second level. It's nothing quite like, what the Life Cleric can do and things like that. But the thing is, you're always able to use it. And I think that's a really important thing for Channel Divinities. They become much better if they're not a situational one. That's really good if they're alright and like in a really common situation. So, because the reason I think that is because you've got Turn Undead, which is a situational Channel Divinity, which is good in that situation. But if you've got another situational Channel Divinity, you'll go through most days or short rests without having to use your Channel Divinity at all. And I think that's just like a waste of resources. So if you always have a use for this, you'll always use it, and you'll get your Channel Divinity done, which I think is really solid. So yeah, I'm a big fan of like constantly useful Channel Divinities, and this is definitely one of them. You can always use it. Protective Bond is a really interesting one. I think in most cases it's quite useful. It's only limited by reactions, and it doesn't need to be your reaction either. It can be whoever's reactions. So you can use it to reduce a lot of damage on your squishies and put it towards your tanks. In particular, I think people that are designed to take damage better especially benefit from this. Like, um, I have a build that revolves around Armor of Agathis and dealing damage by getting attacked. If I had a Peace Domain Cleric in the party using this ability all the time, I would use that reaction whenever I can. It'll be so useful. Yeah. So I think this is a really solid ability. It probably needs to be used a bit right. Like it can be probably people will think it's useful. It's a good idea to use it when it's not, and that can be detrimental. Potent spellcasting standard stuff. So the increase with expensive one, the increase to 60 feet is obviously useful. I wouldn't imagine it was overly a problem because it was 30 feet before, so it wasn't like small. And I think generally you're close within 30 feet of everyone, but this gives you a little bit more wiggle room. And the resistance damage is obviously huge. It's really, really nice. It pretty much doubles the tankiness, obviously. So yeah, overall, I think the Peace Domain is really nice as like in a party. You know, they really bring a lot of good stuff to the party. Makes sense. They're a cleric. I think they're definitely not the strongest. They don't quite stack up to, like Light Domain or Forge Domain or something like that. But I think they're a very solid B tier. I'd probably put them above Beast. Could maybe be persuaded to put them in A, but I think it's just they don't quite get enough. Right. I want to go back to Protective Bond. I just want to talk about. I'm a little unsure about how this works with AoE damage because you'd think AoEs would qualify. So say like Dragon Breath is hitting pretty much your entire party. So when someone's infected by your bond, is about to take damage, second bonded creature within 30 feet of the first, so it will be. It's also being targeted, but like the other one is about to take damage. So it can use its reaction to teleport to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the first creature. So yeah, it can do that. And the second creature then takes all the damage instead. I like. I think it's pretty obvious that it's intended to be all the damage that the other creature was about to take. But it could almost be interpreted that it takes all of the damage of the AoE. It's a little tenuous. I would just rule it that it takes the damage that it was going to take. And in particular, that's quite good for AoEs because you can pretty much take half the damage of your parties. Because if you've got like 4 people being targeted, 2 of them protect the other 2. So they were going to take damage anyway, but nah, the other ones don't take damage. That should work, from my understanding, but it's a little odd with the way that it's written. Yeah. Okay, Twilight Domain. This one, I'm another big fan of this one, and just like with the Peace Domain, they have a really, really solid spell list, which is unusual on a domain list. So Fairy Fire has some redundancy with Bless, but there are times that you want to use one, there's times that you want to use the other, especially with invisible creatures. It's really solid. Sleep is one of the best first level spells when first level spells are all you have. So, like around 3rd level, Sleep isn't that useful, and higher than that, it's pretty much useless. But it's really, really strong at 1st and 2nd level. Like when you're fighting a lot of really low level, low hit point creatures, it's really good. Moonbeam's an interesting one. It does more damage than Spiritual Weapon, but it's also concentration. I think there are times that you definitely will want to use Moonbeam. You can also like sweep it across a lot of people. Um, so if you're heavy on like fighting a lot of creatures, Moonbeam can be really solid there. Lima's Tiny Hut is fantastic. Greater invisibility, excellent spell. Yeah, overall, really big fan of the spell list. Proficiencies, solid. Heavy armor and martial, pretty standard, but like yeah. So you can hold your own, like in the thick of it. Eyes of the Night. This is kind of a little bit ridiculous. Like 300 feet of dark vision is by far the biggest I've seen. I'm not sure how much this will matter. Like I think maybe once or twice I've had 60 feet of dark vision not be enough dark vision, and this is 5 times that. So just all the dark vision you could ever want, by far. On top of that, you can give it to your wisdom modifier. So probably three or four first level, depending if you're rolling or not, and things like that. But just like up to 5, which is a lot, and you'll probably have at least half the party with dark vision anywhere. And you can just provide it for an hour. And that's usually all you need for dark vision. Like, you don't often need dark vision for more than an hour. If you do, it's one first level spell slot to do it, which is pretty damn good. But I'd probably save it for combat, in which case, like, an hour is obviously way more than enough. And so, like, comparing this to dark vision, the spell, it's a 2nd level spell. You target one creature and you give them dark vision to 60 feet. And it's a good 2nd level spell. So this is like, you can use it with a first level spell slot. It's to pretty much your entire party. It's 300 feet. Like, that's crazy. You pretty much don't need to worry about dark vision again. On top of that, you get Vigilant Blessing, which is advantage on initiative rolls to a creature. If you have a wizard, I'd probably give it to them. It's really solid. You can use it as much times as you want, but you can only benefit a creature at a time, so it's pretty much like 1 per encounter. Unless you're, for some reason, rolling initiative at different times. And you're probably not going to be able to get it off even then. But yeah. Like, real solid ability. It'll always be useful. Twilight Sanctuary. This is, I think, the best channel divinity I've seen. I really like the Light Cleric one, but it doesn't seem like that much. But it's a really surprising amount. So pretty much every turn, everyone within 30 feet of your choice gets a d6 plus your cleric level and temporary hit points. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's every round, like always. And plus your cleric level obviously scales quite well usually. Like when we're talking HP per class level, it's effectively adding like 1 die, so going from like a d8 to a d10 on average, because like the average of a d8 is 5, the average of a d10 is 6. So that kind of thing, and you're also getting the d6 on top of it. So you notice the difference in HP between a barbarian and a fighter. So you will notice this difference, and you get it every turn, which is nuts. On top of that, you can just end Charm or Fright on someone. Like, just this is enough to deal with Frighten pretty much all the time, and there are abilities that just completely cancel it out, but they don't normally come in until much later. Like, I think the Paladin gets it at 10th level. Yeah, and this is just to your whole party. It's almost for free, like, with how much. And then charm conditions, like, they actually come up a lot more than you'd think, because a lot of spells are actually charms. So something like a hypnotic pattern is actually a charm. And I'm pretty sure that this could end that on someone, just straight up end it. So this is a really, really fantastic ability. Like, as well as I said before, like I really like abilities that you can use, channel abilities that you can use all the time. And this is definitely one. You go into a combat, and if you want to, like, it will always be useful, really useful. Steps of the night, pretty much, you get a flying speed, or you can get a flying speed when you're in darkness. Lasts a minute, and you get proficiency bonus amount of times. Flight is obviously really, really good. Yeah, you'll get plenty of uses out of this. Very, very solid. Divine Strike, pretty standard. And then the final ability, Twilight Shroud, is it gives all your allies half cover when you're in the Twilight Sanctuary from before. And half cover is pretty much like a +2 to AC. So nothing like crazy, but it's very nice. It's a +2 to AC to everyone. So that'll turn a lot of hits into misses. It's kind of like how I was saying, the D4 adds a lot. You'd normally be getting like a 2. And it's really surprising how many hits it turns into misses. It's the same as this, getting a +2 to AC. It's surprising how many hits you turn into misses. Yeah, I mean, it's like a +2 magic item to everyone for free, on top of any +2 magic items they've got. So yeah, really, really, really strong. I'm quite tempted to put it in S, but I think it's maybe a little early to tell. I think it's really, really solid. I think it's definitely on par with the top level clerics, who I would say is S, but it's maybe on the low end of them. I'll put it at the top of A, and maybe later I'll change it. Okay, moving on to druids. We start off with the Circle of Stars, and this is another quite versatile, like jack of all trades kind of class. It sort of does everything that a druid does well. You know, anything that you want to do as a druid, it does pretty good. You get like little bonuses from everything. So with Star Map, which you get guidance, you'd probably prefer guidance anyway. It's the best cantrip in the game. Why wouldn't you? So you kind of get like an extra druid cantrip, which there are some okay druid cantrips. They're generally not amazing, but it's good to have an extra one. Also, you get Guiding Bolt prepared as a druid spell, and instead of you casting with spell slots, you get to cast it your proficiency bonus per long rest. And I think that's this is a really solid ability because druids don't get a lot they can do damage wise, especially cantrips. So Guiding Bolt adds a really good niche there. So when you might otherwise be casting a cantrip, do a little bit of damage, you can do Guiding Bolt instead, twice at this point, later 3, so on, to deal a good damage. And also the advantage on the next hit is always solid. So you also get Starry 4, which I think you'll see what I mean about versatile. So you pretty much get to choose any of these. Archer, you get on your bonus action to deal do a shot with a D8 plus your Wisdom mod, which is the same as Spiritual Weapon. And as I've already mentioned, Spiritual Weapon is really, really, really good. So you get that without the spell slot. You just get it as a class ability. You can only pick one of these though, so there's an opportunity cost. Chalice is an interesting one. When you cast a spell, you get someone gets an extra D8 plus your Wisdom healing. On a Cleric, this would be a lot better than it is on a Druid, because Druid's healing spells are like Good Berry and like Healing Spirit, or something like that. They're like a cast once, heal later sort of thing. Like I tend to have a lot of Good Berries just left over from like the night before. When you go to sleep, you just cast all your leftover spell slots into Good Berries, and then use them throughout the day. And that's your healing. But when you actually cast it, you don't need the hit points then. But obviously, like, you don't tend to cast them in combat as a druid. Healing Spirit can be okay in combat. I probably wouldn't use this very often. It's quite niche. Like you would cast them out of combat, but like you only get to go into this form so many times. I think it's probably proficiency bonus. Everything else is. Oh, it's wild shape. So you expend a wild shape. So yeah, you get 2 of those. So like, it's not really worth doing it, just for the healing. So I don't think Chalice is that good. And then Dragon, you get minimum roll of 9 with intelligence and wisdom checks. I don't think that would come up often. It's a bit odd. I'm not really sure why that's there, but yeah. But the main thing is the Constitution saving throw. So this is really good. And there's definitely times that I'd much rather have this than the Archer. But I think generally I'd probably go with the Archer. I think in particular this is really good for summoning spells. Because you really, really want to keep your concentration up for them. And if you get a minimum roll of 10, and you got like a good Constitution bonus, you can usually be fine. I mean, like if you take less than 20 damage, that's just an automatic save. So, yeah. Really, really solid ability there. So either of these, pretty excellent. Chalice is kind of 6th level, when you finish a long rest, you get either wheel or woe. So wheel is you can add a d6 to whenever someone makes an attack roll saving throw or ability check. It feels a bit like lucky in the sort of times that you would be using it. I think saving throw is the best use here, but sometimes there are really important ability checks and attack rolls I probably would use at least often. But there's always times that an attack roll is quite important and meaningful that you hit it. Yeah, but like you miss an important saving throw can sometimes really screw you over, and like an ability check are sometimes really, really important. So you'll definitely get times to use this where it'll be quite useful. Woe I think is better, so it's the opposite. You can take away a d6 from an attack roll saving throw or an ability check that an enemy does, and I think this is really useful combining with your spells or another spellcaster's spells that are saves, because you can only target one people. It's less useful in those like big area spells that have lots of saving throws, but especially with like the lower level like single target, but like or even higher level like save or suck spells, it's really, really good, and you get plenty of uses out of it, and it'll make your spell casting a lot better. So like yeah, general spell casting will improves, like a lot. Dragon improves like summoning a lot. Archer improves damage a lot. You've also got the guiding bolt for damage, as well as like a bit of utility. Like it's a general theme of like it's really versatile, good at a lot of things that Druid does already good. Like just improves upon what Druid does already. That's kind of like the theme of this class. 10th level, your Archer and Chalice improves to a D8. It's not going to be a crazy amount of damage at this point, but it's kind of free damage pretty much. And also with Dragon, you get the hover, which is really, really nice. Like flank speed's always good. But the main point I think is that you can change the constellation whenever you start your turn. So you can go from Archer. Finally, Chalice actually becomes useful because if you're about to cast a spell, and also when you come out of combat, you probably want to like heal up some people, so you'll be casting those healing spells then, and you actually know when you're going to be casting those healing spells, so it's actually worth going to Chalice, and you get those extra 2d8 plus whiz. And when you turns when you want to be attacking, you could be using Archer, but then if someone's coming close and you're kind of expecting to be taking some hits, particularly like strong hits, you can switch to Dragon, and also when you need the flying speed, you can just switch to Dragon. Really solid. I think it improves it a lot at this point. And then finally, 14th level, you get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, which is always great. Still comes up all the time, even at high levels. Just always solid. So that'll make you a lot tankier, which is something a Moon Druid does well. Not really any other Druid. So it kind of borrows a bit from that, but it's probably less about the analogy I was using before. Yeah, it'll just let you survive a lot more. So overall, this is high. I don't think it's as good as either Moon Druid or Druid the Shepherd. I think those specialized just go a lot better, and they do what they're specialized in really, really well. Whereas this is kind of like a bit all over the show. Like Jack of all trades, but it's master of none, so its most effective thing isn't as effective as something else that's specialized most effective thing. So I wouldn't put it in S tier. The other two I would. But I think it's definitely better than all other druids. Like Land Druid, it just blows out of the water. Yeah. So I'd put it A tier, probably high A tier, but Twilight is also high A tier. So I'd say it's less than Twilight Domain. Right. Also, the Druid of the Stars is, I thought, an interesting multi-class is with a first level Life Domain Cleric. Because, well, for one, with the Cleric you get the kinds of spells you'd actually be using with the Chalice. So you get more healing that way, and it also Disciple of Life synergizes really, really well with the Druid spells, healing spells. So combining these two, you get a really, really, really good all-round healer, and like all kinds of situations, they're pretty much the best healer. So I think there might be another Druid that's a bit better of it, like a Circle of the Dream, I think. I haven't really looked at them too much, but I know that they've got some solid things that would synergize there. But I think a Life Domain / Stars Druid would be the best healer in the game. I could be wrong there, though. Okay, on to the Circle of Wildfire. This is a really interesting one, because I think it's not what you expect it to be, and what's good, what it does that's really good, is really not what you expect it to be. I'll get into that later, but so looking at the spell list, it's got kind of a theme around like tearing things down and building them up. Like you burn a bunch of people, you heal a bunch of people, you know, that kind of thing. So they're all like blasty hit spells and healing spells. Revivify would be a really big deal if all druids didn't also just get Revivify. So that's pretty good. Interestingly, there's no Fireball here, which is what I expected, because your idea of a Wildfire Druid would probably be like a, you know, blasty type fire one, but there's no Fireball. Surprised. You get Flaming Sphere as well. I think Moonbeam is superior always to Flaming Sphere, except you get an ability that enhances fire damage, but the thing is, either way, you'll be using your bonus action a lot for other things, which is the next ability, Summon Wildfire Spirit. So you pretty much summon a spirit, and you get to command it on your bonus action. We've had a lot of these in this. So looking at it, it's decently tanky. It'll probably be a little less tanky than you are, but you know, 5+5 times your level, and it'll probably have a bit lower of an armor class. It gets to hover, which is really useful. It does some interesting stuff. First of all, you look at it, and it can make a ranged weapon attack. You know, D6 plus proficiency bonus on your bonus actions. Solid, nothing crazy. But then you see fiery teleportation. It gets to do this every single round. It's your bonus action. It gets to do this all the time, after movement, after everything. It's a teleport. It's pretty short ranged at 15 feet, so I'm not sure how useful it'll be, but you get to also take with it every creature of your choice within 5 feet, and anything you don't take with it takes a d6 plus proficiency bonus damage, which is what you'd otherwise be doing with a single attack, but it's an AoE instead. This seems super good, and I think it is, but it has some interesting limitations. It's pretty short range, so it's not going to be amazing, but the fact that you can do this all the time to like multiple people in your party, especially if you plan around this, you could do some pretty awesome stuff with it. You know, if someone wants to disengage instead, teleport them away and deal some damage to the people left behind, and then go get out of the dodge. And yeah, you literally can spam this every single round. You get to do it, so that's pretty good. Other than that, also pets are just really useful in general. Pets like this, you know, you can get them to do certain actions, hold certain positions, things like that. So really solid ability. Enhanced Bond, get an extra D8 similar to the Chalice, like when you ever deal fire damage, or do a healing roll, and similar to the Chalice from the last ability. You don't tend to be rolling healing rolls in combat, but better than this, it actually just is always better than the Chalice. Sorry, it is always on when you got your pet out. You'll have your pet out after combat when you probably want to be casting spells then. But also, you get Cure Wounds now, which works a lot better with it, and you'll probably be casting, and a couple other healy stuff, like Mass Cure Wounds. I'm pretty sure this works with AoEs. It's worded a bit weirdly, as if it's trying to say it doesn't. Like when you cast a spell, it deals, you gain this bonus. You gain a bonus equal to the number rolled to 1 damage or healing roll of the spell, but you do only do the 1 roll for like the AoEs. So like you do a fireball, you roll the 8d6, and you'd add a d8 to the roll. So it wouldn't be one character, but it's worded weirdly as if it's trying to stop something like that, but it doesn't seem to. So just adjusting. I think what's much more exciting about this ability is the fact that you can cast you can cast spells through your spirit. And at first it doesn't seem that good because there's a lot of abilities like that, which are nice but don't come up all the time. But I was thinking with this one in particular, you can be quite far away from it and it still be fine. And it's pretty tanky. So you could literally just leave combat and do all your stuff through there, and you have no chance of like getting hit and losing concentration, things like that, taking hit points and going down. I think that would work absolutely fine. Otherwise, you get to be in multiple places at once effectively. When you're dealing with spells and pretty like chaotic battlefields, it can be really useful then. I think that's really solid, and that's another thing that's like, this subclass seems really powerful in ways that you don't expect. So that kind of thing, you can just leave the battlefield and do everything through your summon. And if it goes down, you just come back, but it probably won't go down. And if it does go down, that means a ton of attacks were targeted to it that weren't targeted to your party. So it's probably a really good thing if it goes down. It's not what the enemies want to be doing, is targeting it. Cauterizing Flame. So, this is like when a creature dies, you can like there's like a weird flame that goes on them, and if something goes over it, you either heal them or damage them. This is a pretty weird ability. Like I think it's good. The healing especially, like you get your proficiency bonus. I think it's 4 at this point, so 2d10 plus your whiz. If your whiz is 5, that's 16. So 64 at this level, and you get more as your proficiency bonus upgrades. And like 64 at level 10 as a heal is really good. It is per day, but like yeah, that's a really solid amount of healing. But in terms of the damage, I can't imagine, because they have to be on top of it. They have to be like in the space when a creature you can see enters that space. So if you were fighting a bunch of bandits and you killed one of the bandits, the other bandits probably won't go stand over top of their dead friend. Like that's not going to happen very often. And even if it does, they especially won't do it if there's a weird fire thing coming out of it. They won't know what that is, and they'll be like, hell no. I'm not standing on that. And if they see your friends getting healed by it, they might be like, oh, it heals. It heals you. They'd have to. They would probably happen pretty rarely. And as soon as one of them goes on it and they get damaged from it, they'll be like, oh, okay, they actually damage you. So at most you'll get it once per encounter. So I really don't think the damage would come up often at all. But the healing's really solid. Yeah, I mean, creatures will be dying. They mentioned smaller or larger creatures dying. There's a dying ability later on that doesn't mention smaller or larger creatures. So it's an interesting limitation. But yeah, that's good. And also finally, if you die, well, if you get 0 hit points, not die, but you can pretty much dismiss your spirit and you get half your hit points back instead of going unconscious. This is obviously a really nice ability. You have, as I said before, you have ways of like avoiding going down. You could literally just not be there, but shit happens, and it's really good when it happens, you know? Yeah. So overall, I think this is a really weird subclass. Again, like it's good in ways that you don't expect. So you kind of need to know what you're getting in for. I think it has enough interesting stuff that it's good. It's on the good side. I also forgot to mention with the domain spells, most druids don't get domain spells or circle spells, so you get a lot more versatile spellcasting than most druids do. And I think it's a much better spellcaster than the land druid is, because that has problems. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid druid. I think it's definitely worse than stars and definitely worse than moon druid and shepherd. But it's got some interesting stuff. I think this is one especially. I could be rated higher, or could be rated lower. Like I feel like I'd have to play around with it a lot to really understand its full limitation, where it's really good and where it's really bad. Yeah, it's an awkward one. Okay, we're moving on to fighters now, and with the Psi Warrior. So there's a lot of psionic subclasses. I think 3, maybe 4 psionic subclasses that were added to this. I think this is the first one though. Yeah, it's kind of late, pretty sharp. But yeah, and I think all of these psionic subclasses are really strong. Um, and this fighter in particular, I think, is honestly probably the new best fighter. I think there's a lot of competition with Echo Knight, and also the other Rune Knight is really good as well. Like, if you asked me 3 months ago, whenever the Explorer's Guide to Wild Knight came out, might have been actually a while before that, I would have said the best fighter was Battlemaster by a all right margin as well. And I think all 3 fighters that have come out since then are better than the Battlemaster by a pretty good margin as well. So yeah, a lot of love for the fighter, which is really good to see. Okay, so you get psionic power at 3rd level, which gets you a bunch of stuff. You get these psionic dies. You have double your proficiency bonus per long rest, and you also get a free one per short rest. So starting out, you'll have 4. Well, like start out with 5, and then each long rest you get an extra 1. And then 5th level you'll have 7 at first, and then each short rest you get an extra 1, and so on. Their d6s at first, and then they scale, d8, d10, and so on. You get to do a couple of things with them. First one is a damage reduction. So it's the die plus your intelligence modifier. Damage reduction is interesting. Damage reduction stacks well, like synergizes with more damage reduction. So if you're only playing low levels, this could be really strong in combination with Heavy Armor Master, because you can cut down like that 3, which might not seem like much when you're taking like an attack of say 15. If you're using this, say you roll a 4, you've got an intelligence of 3, that's 7. That 3 on top of it is taking you from what was a, I think, 8 to a 5, which is like 70% or something of a reduction, which is solid. And you won't be taking 15 damage much at the level, I would hope. I mean, there are cases, but yeah. It's even better with like the less damage it is. But I think overall it's okay. I think I'd rather do the other two in most cases. So the other one is in adding damage. So that's the die plus intelligence. I think it's pretty solid. You'll definitely get uses out of it. And then finally you got telekinetic movement, which is just moving something. So it's large or smaller, which can be huge. Again, you can move it 30 feet. So if you have a boulder around you, move it 30 feet up in the air, large boulder, drop it on someone. That DMs might have a problem with that because it's a lot of damage, or they'll like nerf it and only do like falling damage, for like 3d6. I think it's kind of fair because I think this is probably a little strong if you're using it like that. But also this, like the creation bard as well, doesn't specify that they need to be holding something. So, and you can do this a lot more than the creation bard move as well. So they've got like a strong weapon or something like that. You just pull it out of their hand, and you can even take it like straight on your turn. So it literally specifies if it's a tiny object, you can move it to or from your hand. So that's pretty cool. I think this has a ton of uses in and out of combat. But you can't like predict them all because it's going to be really, really dependent on the battlefield that you're on or whatever you're dealing with. But I think it can solve a lot of problems and it can do a lot of really creative things. So really, really cool ability. And you get one for free as well per short rest. So yeah, in an encounter you definitely use this. You should use this at least once. I think it's definitely worth your action. And if you don't have anything else to do, I probably wouldn't do this above 5th level, but for 5th level, because your action's kind of valuable. You can literally just, there's no save. You raise someone in the air, and they drop 30 feet. That's 3d6, and they automatically go prone. It's pretty good. Probably better things you can do though. I think I should probably have some rules about like moving something into something else. The fact that it doesn't makes me think that like if you grabbed a boulder and like used your 30 feet to move it into someone, it's not got enough force to actually deal damage. But it probably should. If I was a DM, I'd probably do like it does. Like you roll the psionic die, and or maybe 2 of them, or something like that. I don't know. You could tie it to that somehow for damage. 7th level, you get a few new ways. So one is the Psi-powered leap. You get a flying speed of double your walking speed for your turn, and it has a bonus action, so you can use it pretty freely. But you can't. It's only your turn, so it's not really like a flying speed because if you end your turn and you're in the air, you'll just fall. So don't do that. It's more. I mean, yeah, it's a Psi-powered leap, so you think of it more as like a really, really big jump. But it's really good for like positioning, especially at the start of combat, and you get a free use per short rest. Yeah, per short rest. So like it's plenty of times, and it'll come up. Sure, like if there's a big enemy, like a wizard or something like that, enemy wizard that you've got on another line of like a bunch of minions that are really hard to get across, you just Psi-powered leap over all of them, land beside the wizard, destroy them. Can be really, really nice positioning ability. And there will be times that this is useful. Even out of combat, because like chasms to drop and things like that. Cross, I mean. And then telekinetic thrust is just a buff to your psionic strike. You don't need to spend any points on it. And it'll knock someone prone if they fail a saving throw, and you can move them 10 feet in any direction. This is really useful in different ways for a melee build and an archer build. So in a melee build, knocking them prone is really good because you've got follow-up attacks that have advantage. And you can even, if you knock them prone, that's probably a good time for you to use Action Surge because your attacks will have advantage. Then moving them 10 feet can be useful. Like sometimes there's environmental hazards and things like that. You can move them in, especially combining with other your freemate spells and things like that. Moving them into those effects can be really solid. I think you can use. There's nothing saying that you can use multiple dies in a turn. So like, you could knock a bunch of people over and move them all together. They might be saving a bit. What's the save again? It's strength saving throw. So a lot of creatures have high strength, but you know a lot don't. But also, if you're an archer, this is also really solid because you get to control them a lot more. Say there's a lot of distance. Well, there's like 30 feet between you and an enemy, and they could run up to you on their turn and attack you. But you shoot it with an arrow, knock them prone, and move them 10 feet away. On their turn, they have to use 15 feet of their movement to get up, and then they're 40 feet away now, so they can only move 15 feet towards you, so they're only 5 feet closer than they were before. And this is way worse if you combine it with like difficult terrain spells, or the spells that cut people's movement, like plant growth. So you can pretty much just completely keep enemies away from you using this. And again, you can hit multiple creatures. And the amount of dice you have scales really well as well. So like at this point, I think it's 6. Yeah, six per turn, and pretty soon you'll have 8 per turn, per day, not per turn. Yeah, okay. Guard in mind, you have resistance to psychic damage, just flat. Which psychic damage is rare, but resistance is resistance, so it's pretty sick. And then also, if you get charmed or frightened, you can just spend a die to just stop it on yourself. Whenever you're charmed or frightened, maybe you're not charmed socially, but like a spell with the charm condition as part of it, like I'm pretty sure the psionic die using it there should get rid of it. Like hypnotic pattern, you can just stop it. Probably. Might need to clarify that, but from my understanding, it should work like that. And frightened's obviously really debilitating, so whenever you're subject to that, just use a die. It's totally worth it. Yeah. Now, Bulwark of Force. It's similar to the Twilight Clerics ones earlier before, where it gives a bunch of creatures half cover, which is a +2 AC. It's equal to your intelligence modifier. So yeah, intelligence modifier comes up quite a bit. I would probably invest in it more than constitution. I'd probably go strength or dexterity, depending, then intelligence, then constitution. And because you don't have as high a constitution, strength builds become a little less desirable. Not by much, but just because you don't have that added benefit. Like dex builds are better for defense because dexterity adds to your defense, whereas strength doesn't. So it's a little more attractive to go for a dex build. But again, it's not a big difference either way. Yeah, so you get a use of Bulwark of Force for free, but it is unlike the other free ones. It's only per long rest, and it's absolutely worth a psionic energy die. Because +2 AC, as I've already said, really impactful. It's really strong. Yep, and finally you get to cast telekinesis. No components or anything. And you do get a free use per long rest, and you just expend 1 die to use it again. So it's a 5th level spell for like a resource that you have like 12 of. Yeah, 12 plus like many more that you'll get in a day, whatever short rest you have. But the thing is, you are there's a lot of opportunity cost with telekinesis because it uses your action, like each turn that you want to do something with it. I think you can suspend someone and you don't need to keep using your action to keep them suspended. But you do need to use your action to suspend them originally. So you get to use an attack as a bonus action when you do it, but you are, keep in mind, you are doing either like 3 or 4 attacks, the thing that you do really well as a fighter, you're bringing that down to 1 to have an effect that the wizard could do at 9th level, I think. Pretty sure 5th level spells are 9th level, but yeah, so that's it is a bit iffy. You probably want to be using it in creative ways when you can, like if you have specific uses for it. You can be concentrating on it and not have to use your action each turn. That's just when you want to do the telekinesis effect. So I'd be careful with it. I wouldn't be using it as your action each turn. But yeah, really solid. Telekinesis is awesome. So yeah, I think this is a pretty easy S tier. It's really solid. Like you can do so much with it. You can be really creative with it. It's got a lot of spell-like abilities, and which is really good with the fighter. And you've got all your base fighter stuff. The base fighter is really good. It's pretty boring, but it's really strong. Yeah, at all levels of play, I think it's quite solid, and it definitely, when fighters, like all martials tend to fall off at higher levels, it's still got some really good stuff it can bring to the table there. So yeah, I think I'd probably say it's better than Echo Knight, but I really like Echo Knight. Yeah, that's the Psi Warrior. There is definitely some competition with if Psi Warrior is better than the Creation Bard. I'd say it's not. I think base Bard is better than base Fighter by a big margin, but yeah, as I said, like I'm usually rating these against other subclasses that we find, but I think in these cases where it's a tight, it's good to a tight call. It's and there's so much differences between them. So yeah, I'd much rather play a Creation Bard than I would a Psi Warrior, but I'd still love to play both. Yeah, and maybe Creation Bard gets a little bit more. Yeah, it's just that Bard already has quite strong subclasses, and Fighter does too, but just Bard's better. Anyway, moving on to the Rune Knight. So the Rune Knights are based on like giants. You pretty much get these runes. I still think they're fantastic. I'll get into why later, obviously. All right, so you get a couple of extra proficiencies. I mean, they're pretty niche, but thematic and good. Standard stuff. So main draw of this, the rune carver. So you get a number of runes. You have some options to choose from. I'll just go into those. Pretty much, you get like a permanent effect, and you get like a once. I think it's short rest. It might be a long rest effect. That's always quite strong, pretty much. Yeah, and also you can change it up every long rest, however you want to have it. All right, so first rune, Cloud Rune. Whenever you're wearing it, you have advantage on stealth of hands checks and deception checks, which is like permanent advantage. It's really strong. If you definitely if you have a character doing these, it's quite nice. But I probably wouldn't if you want to base it around these two. I wouldn't, as I'll go into later. Like this is not a good rune compared to the others that you can have. Oh, sorry. I'll just double. Oh no, never mind. It is here. So also, you have a reaction that whenever someone's getting hit with a melee attack, you can getting hit by an attack. You can just change the target, regardless of the range as well, which is kind of cool. Just to whoever you want, so you'd get it to target one of its friends. And it is for short rest. So this is definitely good. It's damage that your party doesn't take and that the enemy party does. It does really depend on who is attacking. Like you'd only really want to target the biggest guy there, the one that will be dealing the most damage. And also like it's a single attack, so it doesn't work with multi-attack and things like that. So single strong hits come up less and less later. I mean, well, it's more like strong hits, and they get multiple of them. Yeah. Yeah, so this is definitely decent, and you'll always have a use for it. but as I'll get on, like there are just better ones. Um, so the Fire Rune, you get expertise, so double proficiency, in for any tool use. So this is kind of it's pretty niche because tools don't get used a lot, but some people really like tools and they use it all the time. I've never found them a big deal, but they come up. So especially if you deliberately do it, like expertise is really good. Like you notice it, you become really good at something. Um, but the main thing about this is that you have a just whenever no reaction or anything, whenever you hit a target with attack, you'll do it a lot. You just get to add, so make a strength save, which again, they're strength saves aren't the worst thing to target, and they're not the best thing to target. A lot of the time, it's pretty obvious if a target will have a low strength, just from how they look, so you know whether to target them, and they'll have a high, like it's pretty obvious when something has a high strength as well. So that's quite nice, whereas something like Constitution, I feel like a lot of the time, things tend to have really high Constitution scores, but like also things you don't expect to have high Constitution scores do, whereas strength is pretty consistent. But a lot of things also have really high strength scores. So yeah, just be careful with it. But strength save is a pretty good thing to target, and if it fails, it's restrained for a minute. Restrained is really strong, by the way. It's advantage to hit them and disadvantage for them to hit others, and they can't move. I think it also limits certain actions depending on like specific class abilities and things like that. But while it's restrained, every turn it also takes 2d6 fire damage, which isn't a crazy amount of damage, but it's damage every turn. Like if you've ever used heat metal on something that can't get rid of it, it really adds up. It's strong, and then they can repeat these saving throw at the end of each of its turns. But even if you get like 2 or 3 turns out of this, it's strong. Like third level, you get three sets of this, so that's 66 fire. That's like almost a fireball level of damage, only on one target, but like it's good. And then also they become really weak for that time. That's the main thing. The main thing is restrained for that. The Frost Rune is another okay one, but not amazing. So advantage on animal handling and intimidation checks. Again, could be useful. Probably not overly, common, but it's advantage on ability checks, so great. I'd probably rather the other two advantage. What was it? Like sleight of hand and deception, yeah. I'd use those a lot more than these two, but yeah. So when you evoke the rune, you get plus bonuses to ability checks and saving throws for strength and con. So strength and con, you're not like a spellcaster, so you're not using concentration saving throws all the time. But constitution it's still really common. Strength saves are not that common, but they're good for that. And it's a +2, which is definitely good, and you'll make saves that you didn't otherwise, but I think the other effects, in particular the Fire Rune and when I get to it, the Stone Rune, are just better. So with the Stone Rune, it's Insight, which is a really good one. I think that's probably the best of all of them. And you also get dark Vision for 120 feet. So if you're playing a race without Dark Vision, you're sweet. And even if you get it a longer Dark Vision, a superior Dark Vision, which is solid. I mean, I said before, it doesn't really come up a lot, but I'm sure in some campaigns, DMs are quite anal about how much Dark Vision you have and things like that. But yeah, but the main thing, so Wisdom, I think is one of the best saves because a lot of, especially low level stuff, doesn't have high Wisdom. And then you charm them, like whatever, but also when they're charmed, they are incapacitated and their speed is 0, so they can't do anything. And so they're just completely taken out of the fight for like a number of turns. Gets the saving throw at the end of its turn. And you get it per short rest. So I think I'd rather the Stone Rune than the Fire Rune, but they're both pretty similar. The Fire Rune has some extra damage, but also they can actually do stuff while restrained, and they're just not going to be very effective. Whereas with the Stone Rune, they're completely out of it, and but there's no extra damage. So I think Wiz save. I don't know about it, but like Wisdom is a little bit one where you can't always tell if they'll be good or not. So it is a bit of the roll of the dice, but yeah, it's really strong. And I think these are strong enough. You'll probably be investing in con anyway, but like you want your con high. So I'd probably even like occasionally use an ASI for buffing it up instead of like certain feats and things like that. I think it's well worth it. Same with the Psi Warrior, I didn't say that before, but yeah. When you're a fighter, you get tons of them anyway. I'll do the 7th level runes once we get to 7th level, but we've still got 3rd level stuff to do. Also at 3rd level, you can just become large whenever you want. And advantage on strength checks and saving throws, that's alright. If you ended up taking the Stone Rune, was it? No, the Frost Rune. Synergize as well with the +2 bonus. It's got advantage and then +2 as well. You'll make a lot of strength saves, but also strength saves aren't that common. And strength checks even like less, so especially in combat. And then you get an extra d6 on a damage once per hit. So it's like the enlarge reduce spell, but the enlarge side. A little bit extra damage, but also doesn't hit multiple times. I'd rather the d4 on every hit. Because it's only once per turn. But it's extra damage. It's quite a bit at 3rd level. At later levels, you'll barely notice it, but like you may as well. And just being large in general has its advantages. So you've got, I think this works really well with a reach weapon, because normally when you're just like the normal size, your effective control is so without a reach weapon, it's 8 squares, so like 5 feet away from you. With a weapon, it's an additional 16 squares on top of that, which is 24. And if you're large on top of that, you get like, I can't do the math in my head at the moment, but it's a lot more squares. Like if you look on a battle map and you go like a 4x4 and then go out 2 and go all the way around it, you have a lot of room to attack. And also the Bugbear could be an interesting race with that as well, because you get even more coverage. So I think being large definitely has its benefits. Also, your grapple checks are easier, and you can grapple larger things. I can't remember what the grapple rules exactly are with different sizes, but it's like it's either if you're one size or 2 sizes bigger, you get advantage or like an easier check or something like that. Yeah, so if you care about grappling, being large is good for that. But I think large is mostly good for a control thing. Also, you can carry more, so yay. With the runic shield, you can pretty much force a disadvantage. Number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. It's fine. It's good. Definitely on big attacks it'll come up. So just going back to these Hill and Storm runes real quick. I think they're both really good. I think the Storm rune is crazy. So for one start, resistance and advantage on poison saves is really good, and it's just permanent, like while you have it active. Yeah, really strong. Poison comes up quite a bit. If you've ever played a dwarf, you know this. Yeah. And just as a bonus action for a minute, so probably an entire combat, you gain resistance to all physical damage. That's really strong. Like a really, really popular build is a multi-class between Fighter and Barbarian. You just don't need to do that. Like, that's the main reason. You just don't need to do that anymore. You also get a bit more extra damage, but yeah, like that's the main thing. yeah, very strong. Very good rune. Um, and for the Storm Giant, you get advantage on Arcana checks. Still probably won't come up that often. You're a fighter, and you can't be surprised, which is also kind of niche, but it's alright. But you can enter this prophetic state for a minute as a bonus action, and every single round while you're in this state, uh, any attack, roll, saving throw, or ability, you can use your reaction to have it roll advantage or disadvantage. This is for an entire combat. You can do this. It uses your reaction, so you only get one per turn, but it's like, uh, I mean it's crazy, like, right? Like advantage and disadvantage is a pretty big deal. I'm not even sure where I'd want to do this. Like if you're versing a strong enemy with a strong attack, disadvantage on that would be good. Sometimes you're doing ability checks in combat, and those are usually important. Like you don't want to fuck those up. Advantage on that would be good. Um, Probably saving throw would come up most often. Like if you think you're likely to make a pretty important save, then definitely save it for when you do that, or someone else does that. But yeah, you'll get a solid use out of this every single round. I probably wouldn't use it on friendly attack rollers because there's kind of ways to get around that. Maybe if you have a friend with a crit build or some crit fisher build, maybe you could go for that. Probably not worth it though. Yeah, so I think Storm Rune is probably the best, closely followed by Hill Rune, and then Stone Rune, then Fire Rune, then Frost Rune, and Cloud Rune. So at this level, your third, you get 3. So you do need to get rid of either Fire or Stone. I'd probably get rid of Fire, as I said before. They're like just taking someone out of combat just is really good. Also, while creatures are incapacitated, there's one thing. You can go over to them if you get like the shackles. You can just get over to them, put the shackles on as an action. When they break out of it, then like then they'll be restrained anyway, and they will be able to get out of the shackles. Um, yeah, at 10th level, I think you get your 4th, and then 5th level you get one of the extra ones, Cloud or Frost, whatever you prefer. Runic Shield, so this is like reaction disadvantage. There's like no reason to use this instead of the Storm Rune one when you have it active. But if you are in a combat where you don't have it active, like you didn't get a short rest in between combats or something like that, yeah, it'll come up. You can really like spam this a little bit more than you probably expect because you got your proficiency bonus. But I think most combats you'll be able to get in a short rest, and so you can use your Storm Rune most combats. Yeah, there's a lot of redundancy with the Storm Rune. I'm not really sure why they did that. Great stature. This is pretty inconsequential ability. Like you grow 3d 4 inches. That's like just fluff. Won't really affect your game. And your giant might increases to a D8 instead of a D6. That's an extra 1 damage around at 10th level. Like whatever. Master of Runes. So this is really cool. This is where I think the Rune Knight really starts popping off. Like, so you can use each feature twice rather than just once. So I think your Storm Rune, your Hill Rune, I think a lot of the time you'll be able to use it regardless if you run out. Might actually mean you can start using your Storm Rune outside of combat because it's advantage on ability checks like for ages, so it is really strong outside of combat. But it also does mean if you didn't be able to get a short rest in between combats, you've got this as a safety net. But more importantly, with your Stone and Fire runes, you can use them twice in a per short rest, which will that'll be really useful. Maybe I shouldn't say that's when the Rune Knight starts popping off. It's been popping off this whole time. It's really strong. And then finally, you go to a D10, which is again whatever for the Giant Might. But then also you increase your size to huge, which like one size bigger than large before. It's pretty damn cool. And while you're that size, you also reach by 5 feet. So if you go for a reach build, you grab like a glaive or something like that. Get a Sentinel and Polar Master would go really well with it. You just have so much area control. Like actually, I'll pause this and I'll jump onto Roll20 and I'll just show you. So I just made this to showcase like this over here is the kind of control you'll normally have as a normal character with a melee weapon. It's 9 squares, including the one you're on. Over here, if you go to your huge size and also take a reach weapon, because you've got an extra 5 feet reach normally, and you go for a reach weapon, you have this 81 squares. And actually, if you go for a bugbear, which I think would be a really interesting class for this, in actuality, it's this big. Hold on. It's this big. If we go for a bugbear, which is just like nuts. That's 100 squares that you have control of. And if you've got like Sentinel or something, that's like if anyone gets attacked in this 100 squares, you get your reaction against them, which is probably more useful than the Storm Giant reaction. I'm not sure. And also like Polar Master, anyone comes in, you get your attack against them. Like, so you have so much control. It's nuts. Anyway. So overall, I'd probably rate the Rune Knight. It is really strong. I originally put it down as like mid A, which would actually be less than these two because these are meant to be quite high. I could be convinced it goes higher. I'm quite impressed with a lot of the abilities, but also they are like once-off abilities, a lot of them. Yeah, I'll leave it here for now, but I think it could easily be S. It could easily be over these two, but I think this is probably a decent spot for it. So moving on to the Way of Mercy monk. These are kind of like Plague Doctor-y. Both of the monk subclasses kind of. I really like both of the concepts, but they're just not good. Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah. We'll go into why. The problem with the Way of Mercy monk, I think mostly it's just so overextended. That is the problem with a lot of monk subclasses. I think it's more like problems with monk that just trickle down into the subclasses and then just makes them kind of unusable just from what you've been dealing with. So let's start off. So you get insight and medicine proficiencies. That's cool. Nothing crazy, but yeah. They're both ways to wisdom, which we have decent of. So yeah. You also get a mask. It's pretty much cosmetic. Like it's cool. like it's a cool concept. As I said, it's like plague doctor, right? Yeah. All right. So hand of healing. You can pretty much spend a key to do your martial arts plus your wisdom modifier as healing. This like as a D4 at this level, so that's like a healing word. I'd say as you can do it as your action, but never do. I don't understand why you would ever do that. Like instead, just use a key point to do flurry of blows, and then replace one of your flurry of blows with the healing, and that's pretty much effectively like a free action. Because you just spent one key point and you still get your action and your like one attack as a bonus action. So, yeah. And then Hand of Harm gives your martial die plus whiz as like additional damage after you hit, spending a key point. It's pretty good now because like if you wanted to if you wanted to flurry of blows, you could hit them, and you've already hit them, so you just add the damage. You don't need to hit them again. Although you might miss the initial hit, and then you didn't flurry of blows, which you could have. But you know, it's not chronic damage, so it's better damage. That's kind of the main thing. I mean, it's not a big boost over flurry of blows, but it's a little better. And the healing is not a lot, and you don't have a lot of key points, and you want to be using key points for other things. But it can be okay to top up. I could see myself using it occasionally, but this is pretty much all you get, aside from the sort of proficiency. This is all you get at 3rd level, so I can't see myself using either of these over a lot yet. Yeah, so that's pretty much like a problem. They all use key, which all monk subclasses do, but like their use of key, like you're just gonna be running out of key. You've got 3 at this point, so if you use 1 on healing, you get maybe like, be generous and say you have a +3 wisdom. Actually, that's pretty reasonable. +3 wisdom, d4, so like on average 5.5 hit points, and then you've got 2 key points left. Like you can flurry of blows and a dodge or something like that, but you know, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a problem later on as well. But they do get good buffs here. So when you use Hand of Healing, you can also has like a lesser restoration effect. You're out of blinded, deaf, is paralyzed, poisoned, stunned. Oh, you're wrong, but I think paralyzed is only greater restoration, so that's actually really good here. So if any of your friends are suffering from these conditions, that's where it's well worth using the key point for that. It's not gonna, well, it happens, but it's not like all the time. It's definitely not something that will like carry the subclass. And you can also put the poison condition on someone, which is definitely a good condition. Like yeah, poison creatures disadvantage to take rolls and melee checks. So you make them weaker. Like at this point, your die is also better, so you might like I could see these being a bit more useful, but still they're pretty niche. 11th level, Flurry and Harm. You can use whatever Flurry of Blows attacks that you want on healing, and one of them on harm without using a key point. I think the Hand of Harm, definitely a big buff there. And then the healing, like you can actually get off a decent amount of healing with this now. And you've got more key points to spend, so yeah, I think you're a D8. And yeah. But the problem is, like, if you are focusing on healing, you're not doing a lot of else. Like, you're not getting your stunning strikes off. You might get 1 or 2 off and things like that. And it's not great healing. Like a dedicated healer, especially if healing's all they're doing, could do way more than you'd be able to do. And you kind of have to dedicate yourself to healing to do like reasonable amount of healing anyway. Alright, moving on to Hand of Ultimate Mercy. So, this is like a revival. Just use your action. It's also died in the past 24 hours, so it's a long time. You get 5 key points. And they restore 40/10 plus whiz, so that's like 25, probably. Yeah, about 25. And also gets rid of conditions. So, obviously, your revival is useful. I'm gonna guess that, like, at 17th level, you're probably not struggling for the kind of money for revivals. They probably won't be a big deal. But if it is, this is free. I'm not sure how good of an idea of it is to go in combat, because 5 key points is a big investment, but also someone dying is a big investment. and your action is probably worth a lot less than the clerics or the druids at this point. If you don't have one, this is a fantastic ability, but yeah, you're probably better off, and also they don't have to expend a spell slot. So I think it's probably better off you reviving them than like a cleric or a druid. But it will, keep in mind it does use a lot of key points, and it's a good ability. And so overall, the monk, the Wave Mercy monk, it just doesn't have a lot to fix a lot of the problems with the monk, and you just overextend yourself too much. You don't get enough to like do your other monk abilities. I think it's definitely a lot worse than the Wild Magic Barbarian, but I don't really want to put it too low because it's also a lot better than the Astral Self, and I don't want to put the Astral Self in E. But we'll get to that. I think it's if it's on C tier, it's a very low C, and if it's in D tier, it's a very high D. I'll put it here for now. Okay, so wait. Okay, moving on to the Way of the Astral Self. This is a lot of similar problems to the last one. So, you can manifest these spectral arms that you can use instead of your normal arms. So you can use your wisdom instead of strength. That's thematic, but also probably won't actually come out that much. You can use them to make unarmed strikes, and you also have reach with them, which is pretty cool. And you can use your Wiz instead of Strength or Dex. So with this, you actually want to have Wisdom first, like as your most important attribute, and then Dex, and then Con. So if you're wanting to make a Wisdom-based monk, this is the way to do it. And also it's force damage, which is the best damage type in the game. So yeah, overall, like it doesn't actually improve your unarmed strikes much. Like you're not doing any more damage. It's a better damage type, and you have reach, and that's alright. Also, you can go a little bit more single ability to score dependent with wisdom, but wisdom and dex kind of did a lot of the same things anyway. Like a lot of the reason you wanted wisdom as a secondary stat is because of it's adding to your AC, which so removing it from dex is also removing it from your AC. That's just on like a couple of the monk abilities, and those are better because you can go your wisdom higher, which I think is a big plus. Maybe that I didn't give it credit for before. But also when you summon these arms, they do cost a key point in their bonus action. You do 2 rolls of your martial die in damage to everything within 10 feet of you that you choose, which is actually quite a good AoE. It's like it's pretty likely to have a couple creatures in there, and you get your 2 rolls off. That's alright. It's like 5 damage at this point because you got d4s, but soon it'll be 2d6, and that's like 7 damage. So, alright, all round. And then later at 6th level, you get Visage of the Astral Self. So this is like your head part. It also costs a key point, and it's also a bonus action, but you can actually activate them both as the same bonus action. Although I wouldn't be doing that a lot for a while because I'll talk about it in a second. Because there's not really like a lot of combat uses for the Visage. So Astral Sight is the first one. You see normally in darkness, both magical and not magical for a distance of 120 feet. So the non-magical part can be really, really good if someone else has access to like a darkness spell or something similar, some kind of magical darkness effect. Because that means you can see everyone and no one can see you, which means you have advantage against everyone and they have disadvantage against you, which is really, really strong. That's the only combat application though for using this, because the other one is you have advantage on insight and intimidation checks, so it can be used socially. The thing is, with insight, a lot of the time when you're making an insight check, you kind of want to do it subtly. And this is summoning a gigantic spectral head, um, which is pretty obvious that something's going on, you know. And intimidation checks definitely check out, like that would be intimidating as hell. But like it's kind of niche. Like you're a monk, you don't need to be doing intimidation checks. You're a little better at it, but it's not like you'll be amazing even then. And then Word of Spirit is you can anyone within 60 feet you can talk directly to and no one else can hear you. Has its uses. Alternatively, you can amplify your voice so that 600 every creature in 600 feet can hear you, which is a lot. That's going to be really loud. Also, Thaumaturgy makes it 3 times as loud, I think, off the top of my head. So that's like 1,800 feet, which is miles. Well, a mile. So yeah, it's not that good. I can't really see where it would come up that much. Like dark visions, obviously, would come up if you don't have dark vision. You're spending a key point for that, which is okay, but like, eh. And then the social stuff is a little bit could be useful, but it's probably not something like you can rely on, and it doesn't make you that much more interesting. When you would be summoning the Visage in combat is with the body of the Astral Self. So when you have both of them summoned, you can cause the body to appear. And you also get these additional benefits. So when you take acid, like energy damage, you can deflect it like you do with Deflect Missile, and it just reduces the damage by a d10 plus your Wiz mod. So we're at 11th level now. So that's when we get into like dragons and stuff. So you'll probably be taking a lot more damage than like this. Like the damage reduction wouldn't be that significant on it, but it's still damage reduction, and you can do it whenever. Just takes a reaction. So it's decent. That's an average of, if your Wiz is maxed out, it's an average of 10.5. So pretty good. That's nice for sure. And then Empowered Arms, when you make a strike, you deal two of your martial arts die. So that's d8 at this point, I think. Pretty sure. So that's like 2d8, which does buff your damage a lot. It's still not good damage though. You're getting a few strikes. Yeah, it's like it's definitely better, and it's probably on the higher end of what monks tend to do for damage. But past level like 6 or 7, monks deal like absolutely no damage compared to anything else that's trying to do damage. And finally, at 17th level, your Awakened Self. So it uses 5 key points, which is a lot. I think it's honestly debatable if it's even worth it, because like that's 5 uses of Flurry of Blows. So and you don't actually get that much if you compare it to that. But it's nice. So you get a +2 bonus to your armor class. As always, that's pretty great. It will turn a surprising amount of misses into hits. So when you use your extra attack feature to attack twice, you can attack 3 times if all attacks are made with your Astral Arms. So like that's like 4 arm attacks without any key points. Which will be d8s. I think it caps at d8s. I haven't looked. They might actually go to d10s, but so that'll be 8 d8 plus 4 times Wiz, so plus 20 on your turn, which is about 56 damage, which is honestly quite a bit better than a lot of monks can do at high levels. Maybe I rated it a bit low. Yeah. But I mean, the low levels and mid levels, you're getting almost nothing in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I think it still deserves to be pretty low. Like, the parts where monks are good, it's bad compared to others. So, or the parts where monks are okay. So yeah, I think it deserves to be quite low. D for sure. I think I could be convinced that this goes down here and this goes down here. I'll see how it looks when the others come in. Because there are a few on the lower end from there on. Yeah, anyway, let's move on. Alright, so we have Oath of the Watcher Paladin. Oath of the Watcher's Paladin. And this is probably the new worst Paladin. Yeah, starts off pretty well with spells. Like counter spells are big standout. Banishment's pretty good. Moonbeam's okay. Especially because Paladin's not too likely to be concentrating, so decent spells. Said worse and a lot better. Oh yeah, hold spells on Paladins are really strong. I'd probably prefer a hold person earlier on so you can like upcast and get multiple creatures though. But yeah, onto the channel divinity. So you get Watch as well, which pretty much just gives your charisma mod of party members advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. This is quite strong, especially if you know you'll most likely encounter these saves. It's a little situational, especially at low levels. You probably don't get too many saves, but advantage on saves, especially later on when you get your aura, is really strong, and you're quite likely to make these saves with like, advantage and plus charisma on top of it. It's quite good. Gonna draw the extra planar. It's like pretty much the otherworldly kind of types: aberration, celestial, elemental, fey, and fiend. It's a turn ability, normal stuff. So it is good against these types, but whether you see these types all that often is another question. That's the kind of a lot of the Watcher is based around like fighting these types or like extra planar enemies and things like that. And if you're in a campaign that you know you'll be fighting a lot of these, it's still a lot better. Well, it is a lot better. It's still not the best. You probably even then prefer to have some of the stronger paladins, but it'll be quite serviceable though then. Aura of the Sentinel, you add initiative to your aura pretty much, so plus charisma to initiative. This is good as well. I quite like this. A lot of your friends will love you for it. If you stick close to the wizard, they'll get a big boost out of it. Yeah, and pretty much anyone that wants initiative, just get them to stick by you. And that's quite nice. Vigilant Rebuke. Yeah, whenever any of your mates succeed on an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma save, you get to deal 2d8 plus your charisma mod back at them. This is 15th level, so that's like 15 damage. If not less than that. Depends on your charisma, but probably like 12 or something damage. On average, which is pretty, yeah, like, don't care too much about it, but it's reaction damage. If you don't have something better to do on your reaction, like if you think you're pretty likely to get an opportunity attack, definitely take that, because your normal weapon attacks are much more than this. But also, if you do have like friends in your aura, then they have a really high chance of saving these. So pretty much whenever these saves come up, they'll be, and you're using your channel divinity as well, they'll probably save it. But that's more like base paladin thanks to give to that more than this. The advantage is definitely good, but yeah. And Mortal Bullock, typical like final form 20th level Paladin stuff. True Sight is quite solid, but also a little niche. And advantage on the types, which is good if you're fighting them. Once again, and when you hit someone, you can make them make a charisma save, or they get banished if they're not from the native plane. So this is quite strong. I think this is probably one of the best features. How often you're fighting things from a different plane is questionable. Like, so I'm thinking like a lot of the campaigns where you think you'll be fighting a lot of these extraplanetary enemies, you're probably fighting a lot of them because you're in their dimension, and it just doesn't work there. So it's like Descent into Avernus, you'll be fighting a lot of fiends. But the banishment doesn't work on fiends if you're in Descent into Avernus because you're already in hell. So I'm sure there are campaigns where you're likely to be facing one of these types all the time, so you can plan for it. But so, yeah, when I rate it, I think it's definitely the worst Paladin. Could be as low as a D. I mean, Mercy Monk's pretty bad. I think because the base Paladin was so strong, you'll still have, a good time. But like, if you compare what this gets to like a Conquest Paladin or the Oathbreaker Paladin, it's nuts. The amount of like frighten you can get off and things like that. Even like if you got all of these features at 3rd level and you got the 3rd level or 2nd level, sorry, 2nd and 3rd. No, it is just 3rd. If you got all the 3rd level stuff, you if you got all of the stuff at 3rd level, excluding this, then and you got like just the normal conquest stuff at 3rd level, I'd probably still want to play a conquest paladin more than the watcher. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like it has anything too useful. It's just kind of like fluffy stuff that's nice to have, but it doesn't add anything like too tangible. Alright, on to the Fey Wanderer. Starting off, you get Dreadful Strikes. You get a D4 once per turn, in addition to any new attacks. A lot of the newer Rangers get like an additional bonus attack. And this is definitely the weakest. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say there. It's okay. I mean, per each round, so it'll add up, but like it's not game changing at all, and there are definitely better subclasses that do this. I'll say this a lot. Like I think the Horizon Walker does a lot of the same things that this class does, and just does it a bit better and a bit more solidly. It's because it's like pretty directly comparable to another subclass that is better than it. I think that brings it down quite a bit. So spells, all of these spells are good. Charm Person, it's quite useful, honestly, especially when you upcast it. You can actually like stop encounters from happening if you do it, kind of well. A lot of people sleep on this spell. It can be quite good. Misty Step, absolutely good spell. Dispel magic, very useful. Dimension Door, really, really nice. Mislead, I don't really know a lot about. I'm sure it's useful. The stuff's just cosmetic. So this lets you add your wisdom whenever you make a charisma check. This is interesting. This actually means that theoretically you could be the best socializer, like the best possible socializing build. That's quite unlikely though, because you probably won't be investing in charisma much. At most, it'll be your 4th, and if it's not that, I don't recommend it. Putting it up from there. But also, wisdom you don't actually need wisdom on a ranger. All of the best ranger spells don't need wisdom at all. And so if you build it that way, you're fine having like a 12 wisdom a lot of the time. It does mean a couple subclass features like this do get a little shafted, but usually they're not that good anyway. So this is like niche. It's interesting. I think it's really interesting, but it's not really that good. And you honestly don't get that much from wisdom down here either. That's on a safety save, but yeah, I think that's it. Alright. Beguiling Twist. So whenever someone fails a save or succeeds on a saving throw against Charmed or Frightened, it can be friend or foe, whatever. You can use reaction to force someone else to try and be Charmed or Frightened. I think this is just base Charmed, so yeah, it does mean they can't attack you. But they can attack your friends and stuff like that. I think Frightened is much better. So most of the time you'd want to do that. But also a lot of the time if you're like if it's an enemy trying to charm or frighten some of you guys, they will probably be immune to whatever condition they were using as well. Just how monsters tend to be built. But otherwise, it's pretty good. I mean, it's a reaction, and it's otherwise an infinite resource. So whenever it comes up, it's well worth using a reaction for. And you can encourage this because you've got stuff that can, you've got Charm Person. You can try use that. And if one of your things fail, you can use it to try and charm or frighten another person. And yeah, other people will have them. And there are other ranger spells as well. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but you can definitely have conditional based spells. Fey Reinforcement lets you summon Fey without concentration mostly, and also once without a spell slot, I think. Yeah, once without a spell slot, one with hero components. This is really solid. I'm a big fan of that, especially removing concentration, because I think Summon Spell's quite a good spell. The Satyr, or whatever you can make it, does have an effect that tries to charm or frighten. I think you can pick another creature that looks decent. I think because all these summon spells are new, kind of need to spend a lot of time with a lot of them to see how good they are. But I think anytime you have a summon spell that doesn't require concentration, it's quite good. Yeah. And then Misty Wanderer, you can slip in and out. You can pretty much cast Misty Step a bunch without using spell slots. Wisdom modify. So it's kind of worth investing in Wisdom for this if you're going to go for the subclass. But like base Ranger, you don't need to. And also when you cast Misty Step, you can bring one person with you, like a Dimension Door or something. This is real solid. It'll give you a lot of mobility around. But also like just to compare, I think this is a really nice ability compared to like most of the stuff that you're getting. So I'm talking about it positively, but that was like a 3rd level ability that was much better for like Wildfire Druid. And like it was much more versatile. So I think it's just because you're used to like bad stuff. So when I'm talking in a positive tone, that's just like relative to what's here. Cause like compared to something like a Dread Ambusher or even the Horizon Walker, like this just has nothing of much value. Whereas like a Dread Ambush, you can get a ton of damage out of. Yeah, I think this is on the lower end. I am rating this a C. Where it goes within C though, I think it's probably up here. This is up here. I think I'm quite biased with the wild magic Barbarian. Because it's also not bad at low levels, whereas this is kind of below average. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good spot for it. Yep, that was the Fey Wanderer. Alright, now we've got the Swarmkeeper. Absolutely sick concept. So you get a bunch of insects that follow you around. And they can do things in battle, so once in each turns you can do one of the following. So attacks target takes d6 extra piercing damage from the swarm. That's an example of like why it's another ranged thing that gets extra damage per turn. That's better than the Fey Wanderer. Or you can make a strength save or be moved 15 feet horizontally in a direction of your choice. That's obviously like situationally really good if it fits. Also, like you could combine it with spike growth for a lot of damage. And you are moved by the swarm 5 feet horizontally in a direction of your choice. This one's probably the most situational. I'm sure there are uses for it, but I don't know. I assume that it doesn't provoke attack of opportunity, so it could be a good way to disengage. It's probably it is a good way to disengage, but other than that, I can't really think of much. That would actually be quite nice with a dual sword ranger. Yeah, like sit between targets a bit easier. You learn Mage Hand, good cantrip. It's the only cantrip you know actually, so cantrip's always nice. That's a pretty decent one to have. If it's the only one you know. And you also learn some more spells. So Fairy Fire, excellent. Web, excellent. Gaseous Form's pretty bad. But Arcane Eyes, brilliant. Insect Plagues, pretty good. I think I haven't actually used it before, but yeah, I remember it being alright. Yeah, so it's a really, really, really good spell list. Fairy Fire and Web are like two of the best at fully level, and like Arcane Eyes super useful. Writhing Tide, you pretty much get a flying speed. It's a very small flying speed of only 10 feet. For a minute, proficiency bonus amount of times. For long rest. Like even though it's a small flying speed, flying is still really, really useful, especially as a ranger. Like if you can get up into the air a safe amount of distance, and you're only dealing with melee targets, like you're sweet. You can just keep firing down at them. So Mighty Swarm, you just get a couple upgrades to each of the swarm abilities. You do a little bit more damage, D8. You can not prone. I'd probably not be using this that much at this point because it's just less damage, and the other ones have more tangible effects. You cannot prone if you want to. That could be a bad thing if you are ranged because prone gives disadvantage from ranged creatures, but also can make it really shut down their movement because like it's a move and prone. So you move them 15 feet away and they're prone. So like if they use 15 feet of their movement to get back up and then another 15 feet to come back, they haven't moved at all. And if you have some kind of difficult terrain thing in between, as I talked about before, like spike growth for one, they'll take the damage as they go through it, and they'll take the damage that they would need to come back. So certain types of enemies, it can be really debilitating to be doing something like this. I mean, when you are moved, you gain half cover until the start of your next turn, which is real cool. Plus 2 AC. Seem to get this a lot now. It's kind of odd. I feel like cover is something that never came up before Tasha's, and especially in like class abilities. And finally, your capstone, you can discorporate. Yeah, discorporate into your swarm, avoiding danger. So basically, whenever you're attacked, you can use your reaction. It gives you resistance to any damage, like whatever you're taking, and you teleport 30 feet. So this is really nice. If you're taking like a really big hit, you can take half damage and you get out of dodge. Especially if it's like a multi-attacking creature, they come up, they get their first hit off you, you're gone. Reaction teleports are very good. So yeah, Um, and the resistance to like any damage is really strong. You get proficiency bonus, so like 6. I forget when you get your 6. It might be 16. Soon after this, you get your 6 anyway. If not 5 times. So that's like a decent amount of time. Decently, you get to use it a decent amount of times per day. Yeah. Overall, I think it's quite good. Still nothing compared to like some of the Xanathars ones. But I think it's more in line with like the player's handbook ones, but probably a bit better than the player handbook subclasses, and better than Monster Hunter for sure. Yeah, I think it earns a B, pretty average spot. Where's it landing here? I'd say there for sure. Okay, moving on to the Phantom Rogue. This is probably the best damage dealing rogue there is possible. Actually, definitely is. Yeah, I think it's really good. Let's get into it. So first off, you have a floating proficiency. Like every day, you can choose a proficiency that you want, and you get it. And like thematically, it doesn't really say that like, you like, constantly and talking to ghosts and stuff like that, but you definitely like pull off that vibe, and this is like super cool like story wise and roleplay wise. I'm not really rating off that. I think it's a really big bonus. It's not like a bland subclass. I'll sort of be describing the mechanics as if they are. I'm kind of just boiling them down for ease of talking about. Anyway, so also at 3rd level, if you deal sneak attack, you can deal half the sneak attack that you were doing, rounded up, to another creature. So if you're at like 3d6, that's you get to do 2d6 to someone else. And you get this proficiency bonus amount of times. So this is okay when you get it, but it scales up exponentially. So when you get it, you're doing 2d6 normal sneak attack damage, and then you have proficiency bonus of 2, so you're only getting 2d6 total throughout the day. Whereas like 5th level, you're doing 3d6, that becomes 2d6 when you're using this, and you get it 3 times, so that's 66, which is 21 damage on average. So already a lot more, nothing crazy. When's the next time you scale? 7th level you get 46. 9th level, and I'll talk about 9th level in a bit. It's actually a lot more than this, but 9th level you have a 4 proficiency bonus and a 5d6? Yeah, 5d6. Sneak attack. So that's 20d6 total that you'll be doing extra in a day. No, sorry, because it's half 5d6, so it's 3. So an extra 12d6 you're doing in a day, which is a lot more. But also, at level 9 you get tokens of the departed. So pretty much whenever someone dies around you, and I will say as a reaction, when a creature you can see dies within 30 feet, that's the line. You get a trinket from it. There's a big trinket table, so you can get a hell of a lot of like really interesting trinkets and things like that. You can have a lot of fun. Like if you're a DM with a Phantom Rogue, you can have a lot of fun like deciding what thematically, like whatever the creature was, what a good trinket would be and things like that. Mechanically, you can have up to your proficiency bonus, so 4 at the moment. And that's just your maximum. But you'll be used. If you have 4, you just use 1, and then next time you encounter a death, you get 1. So like, it's not like you can only get 4 in a day. You can get as many as you see as long as you're spending them. So while you have at least 1, you have advantage on death saves, which is really nice, and also con saves, which will definitely come up. So yeah, I would try and keep at least one. Also, you can use a trinket. You can destroy one to use your Whales of the Grave feature. So you get a lot. You can get a lot more uses out of this now. It really does depend on how much you're killing. And also you can destroy a trinket and you can talk to the ghost of whatever it was. It also says it's like under no obligation to actually tell you the truth it doesn't want to. And things like that, it's probably eager to be free. So I think if you're actually looking for specific information, it's not that good. You're not gonna find what you want in most cases because like if it's an enemy, they're just not gonna tell you. I think the only real like case is if there's like a friend that's died, maybe not a PC, but like an NPC that's died. You need to see them die, so it would have to be like in front of you, and they were probably like holding out on you, but they weren't expecting to die, so like they did actually want you to know, just not now, or they realize they want you to know after they die. Like it's not going to come up much. You actually get the information you're looking for out of this. So yeah, and because you need to see them die, it's not like you can come across a dead body and be like, oh, how'd you die? What happened here? All that. So back to when you see a creature die. I think the intent of this is when like you're in an encounter and your party kills someone, and maybe occasionally when there's like a story death. But I just say it's creature and like bugs and things like that and insects are counted as creatures. So you can just like collect a bunch of bugs and kill them whenever you want a soul. Read as written. I think it was a bit of an oversight that they had that. Maybe that's a little bit overpowered. I'd say if that was the case and that was fine, this is easily the best rogue in the game because you can just keep doing that. It's like your sneak attack is 1.5 times better, just permanently, always. But I think there's still a lot of times that you can get a death that you didn't realize. Because it's definitely like small creatures and stuff, like well, like small animals, not necessarily insects and things, but like um, you could visit like the town's butcher house or something like that. Guarantee there'll be things dying there, or like so if you seek out death, you'll find it. If not, you could just keep buying donkeys for like I think that's 10 gold, and just have a bunch of donkeys follow you around and kill one when you need a soul, which is pretty fucked up. But it's an option. So there's definitely plenty of ways that you can get this more often than you'd expect. But if you can just get any old creature, just a bunch of bugs and things like that, this is crazy. Like you can have so many so easily. As well as like going into combat, you can only have 4, unless you like use an action to kill some bugs to get some more. And also you'll be killing things in the combat, so you can refill it then. But yeah, that's pretty much how that goes. So this just keeps scaling up. Like your sneak attack is better, and you get a bigger proficiency bonus, so you get to use it more, and you get more trinkets. So it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. Ghost Walk, you can phasically become like a ghost. So you get a flying speed of 10 feet, which is nice. Again, it's not a lot, but it's always useful. Like flying is really strong. This you get quite a bit later than the Swarm one was, 13. But also on top of that, Integrals have disadvantage against you, which is really, really solid. And you become incorporeal, so you can move through to objects and stuff like that. Interesting, it says you take a d4 of damage if you end your turn inside a creature and object. This is kind of seen as like to discourage you doing that. But the thing is, if you like float into the ground, right? Just end your turn. Nothing can get to you, and you're only taking a d10 force damage. And you can even use your reaction if you're pretty confident that, like, because you do have a conflict with acquiring souls, because you need your reaction for that. But if you got your reaction and it doesn't seem like there'll be a death this round, you can just uncanny dodge that 1d10 force damage. And so like on average a d10 is a 5.5. If you half that, if you half a 5, you get a 2. If you half a 6, you get a 3. So it's like 2.5 damage that you'll be taking. At 13th level, you have like, say you've got a 2 con and you just took average each time, you'd have 92 hit points, and you're taking like 2 a turn with nothing being able to hit you. So that's actually a really, really good strategy to just fly into the wall or something when it's your turn's over and just take this force damage. You might get a mad DM for that. And then Death Thread. So this is where it becomes kind of crazy, the amount of extra damage you get compared to other rock subclasses. So Whales of the Grave, you get to also deal the necrotic damage to the first and second creature, so it becomes twice as good now. And also on a long rest, if you don't have any souls, you can get one. It's nice if you don't have any souls. I'm not sure how often that'll come up. Again, I probably need to practice with it to see how much of a balance keeping soul trinket is, but I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to just keep some souls on you. I did the calculation before. So at 20th level, ignoring the like extra souls you can get, just thinking you have like your proficiency bonus. So like your normal proficiency bonus, you've got 6 free, and you're normally doing 10d6 at that point of sneak attack damage. So that becomes 5d6 6 times. That's 210 damage you just get from your normal bonuses. Like that's just your and then you also get your tokens above that. Oh, sorry, 10d6 because you're dealing it twice with this new feature. So yeah, you get a lot of extra damage compared to what you're normally putting out with a rogue. Is it better than an Arcane Trickster? I think you'll be dealing a lot more damage. If that's what you're interested in, then yeah, it's better than Arcane Trickster. I think Arcane Trickster gets a lot of really cool stuff that I think just doesn't compare to this. This also gets a lot of really cool stuff, but like, it's not. I think it's definitely on par with the Arcane Trickster, but the Arcane Trickster can just do so much like interesting things that it's still competitive, even though it's doing way less damage. And also, I think an Arcane Trickster is straight up better until you get to 9th level. Still, this is still really good though. Yeah, that's probably about does it for the Phantom. Big surprise. That's going in S tier. Depending on the like how creature is determined, it can go up and down. I think if you just have effectively infinite access to the soul things, I think you'd probably even top the creation bard. Even all you're doing is damage, but so much damage. and other uses, I suppose. But yeah, even then, no, I suppose it's not that versatile. I'd probably want to put it here because like the Psi Warrior gets a lot of interesting stuff as well as good features, and same with the creation bard, whereas the Phantom's like damage. Alright, so that's the Phantom. Okay, on to the Psi Knife. There's another psionic. Sorry, the Soul Knife. There's another psionic subclasses for the rogue. So 3rd level, like the fighter, you get a bunch of the Psi dice, which is 2 times your proficiency level plus 1 per short rest. And they start at d6s and they level up as you move up. So what you can do with these is you can either roll them and add them to something you're proficient with, which can be really nice, and you'll have a lot of these early on without a lot to spend them on. So you'll find you're using that for boosting your ability checks a lot. definitely really nice and like the really important ability checks, but you'll have enough that you can like do some of the just more nice ability checks as well. Your other use at third level is Psychic Whispers, which lets you do get telepathy. So you get up to at first. It's your proficiency bonus, so starting out with 2, but it does get quite a bit more, and it can be for like hours. So you roll your dice. It starts at a d6. It can be up to 6. You know, it's like average 3. Even if it's just 1, an hour is usually enough for whatever you need the telepathy for. But later on, you can do this in like a day, and you get a free use as well. But when you get like a d12, it can be like the whole day, easily. Also, you don't need to share a language with something, so it's it's as good as tongues. If the creature you're trying to talk to is willing, like you can get to telepathy with them even if they don't, even if you don't share a language, and you can talk just fine. Yeah, you get free use per long rest, so like you don't even need to expend any of the dice a lot of the time. So like you can just use all of it for the boosting your abilities early on, which is really nice. And the boosting abilities is a really solid ability, especially for like a skill monkey kind of thing with Rogue. On top of that, you also get the Psychic Knives, which are like they're D6s, so that's as strong as like a short sword or a short bow, which is most likely what you'd be using. It's probably what I'd recommend. It's less than a rapier, but you have the bonus of being able to do a second attack, which is a D4, but you also get your Dex bonus as well. So overall, deal quite a bit more than a rapier, and you'll get multiple chances to hit sneak attack, which is the main thing. The finesse and throwing properties are definitely nice. Like you can 60 feet, I think. Yeah, 60 feet. So like you can go ranged or melee, and it like makes no difference. They're both absolutely easy to do, and you can transition between them absolutely fine, and things like that. So comparatively to like other rogue builds, you might be like, what I usually do is go for 2 short swords. So that's, you get like your 2d6 off from that, and also like a 2d6 from sneak attack, because you also get 2 chances to get it. But you only get the dex bonus, which at the moment I'm calculating is +4. It's probably more likely to be next level that you get that, but whatever, that would come out to like an 18 on average, whereas a rapier would be like 15.5 on average. With the soul knives, because you get to have your dex bonus twice, you get up to 21 on average. The crossbow expert build using a hand crossbow does get 22, which is 1 more, but it also uses an entire feat for 1 damage on average, more than the soul knife. So quite solid. There is a problem. Based on how it's written, I'm thinking, like red is written, you'd most likely be empty-handed, because they disappear as soon as you use the soul knives. It means you won't have a weapon in your hand most of the time, which you need for opportunity attacks. So if you ever get an opportunity attack, which is something you really want to take as a rogue, especially because you get to use sneak attack on if it's out of your turn, you might not be able to take it. If I was running rogues, I feel like that's really pedantic, and if I was running with someone with this, I'd just let them. And I feel like you could maybe argue, like, it feels weird that you would just immediately use the attack and then the blade disappears. That's kind of what yeah, the blade vanishes immediately after it hits or misses the target, so I feel like you should be able to, like, let them stick around. Basically that. Mainly because of opportunity attacks, but just, like, thematically, that's cool, that's interesting. It's like psychic blades. Anyway, over to 9th level, you get a bunch of other Psi abilities.
So whenever you use Psychic Blades and miss, you can add your Psychic die, see if you can hit, and you if if this causes the attack to hit, you expend the Psychic die. So that means that you don't actually expend the die if you roll it and you still miss. You actually still get to keep it, which is really cool. And this is quite a good use for them. You also get Psychic Teleportation. So as a bonus action, you roll the dice and you can teleport up to that 10 times that many feet away. So D8 at this point, I think. Yeah, D8, D10 at level 11. D8 at this point, so like you can go up to 80 feet away on a bonus action on a pretty cheap resource. Like that's a strong teleport, and yeah, and like later on you can get up to like 120 feet. It's 45 on average at this point, but it's quite inconsistent. So I mean, you can get as little as 10, right? So you could be really needing that big teleport, and you only can go 10 feet away, which is like nothing. So yeah, but it'll always be at least a disengage. I forgot to say before when I was talking about bonus actions. This is competitive with your cunning action, which is like always useful to be doing. So if you want to be using your cunning action more, it could pay to have like a rapier out or something. At the very least on you, if you want to deal that extra dice of damage. It's really not a big deal though. If you're just doing a d6 instead of a d8, it's like 1 damage on average. All right. These are both really useful. More uses for the die. You do get a free. Oh, you don't. No, never mind. I thought you got a free use of this, but you don't. But yeah, both of those, like the teleport's not going to come up all the time. It's not going to like be useful every round, but when it is useful, it's so worth like a single die. It's like if you become invisible for like the dice amount of time, so that'll be a D10 at this point. So even just in hours. Oh wait, sorry, I got that wrong. It is only an hour. So you just become invisible for an hour, which is ages. Whatever you need to be invisible for, you could probably do in an hour, right? And it's free. You get a free one per day. And if you want to do more than that, if you want to be invisible for more than an hour a day, then it's just a single die to go invisible again. So if it comes up that it's useful, you do it. But you can't. It's like weaker invisibility, so you can't damage people while you're invisible. So it's not gonna be that useful in combat. It could come up. It's definitely like probably wouldn't come up much where you could just use your teleport. But it could definitely be useful. And it's so cheap just to go invisible for a whole hour. That's pretty crazy. Invisibility is obviously so useful outside of combat, in particular. Yeah. And finally, with Rend Mind, you can make them make a Wiz save, or they'll be stunned for a minute. And the stun, they get a chance to repeat the saving throw each turn. And that's no like action or anything. It's just whenever you do a sneak attack to someone, so you can just do it. As an additional, you get 1 per long rest, and it takes 3 die to get it back. So at this point you have 12 dice plus 1 per short rest. Like 3 is not a ton, but it's still like what the amount of value you can get out of 3 psychic die is pretty crazy. Like you can get telepathy for like most of a day, but you get that for free. So like more telepathy if you don't get enough telepathy. You can get like teleports, like 3 teleports, and you can get turn 3 hits into misses. So 3 die is pretty good. Oh, sorry, 3 die is kind of a lot. You can use this quite a bit. And you still have quite a bit of die left over. I think this is one that is it's worth because stun is a big deal, especially stun for multiple rounds, and stun off just an action sorry, not even, just start off what you'd be doing anyway is great. If they have low wisdom, this is excellent. If they have a decent chance to save, I'd probably look for a target that you might have a low wisdom save. I find it's pretty hard to tell when a creature would have a low wisdom save. A lot of creatures have a high wisdom save, just regardless. So yeah, but this is definitely a good ability. Like if you get a couple rounds of stun off something, that's like it can turn the tide of a battle, especially if they're like a significant creature that you're up against. Yeah, overall, I think absolutely excellent for sure. Better than any other rogue aside from Phantom and Arcane Trickster without question. How they stuck up to those two though, I think it's definitely worse than Phantom. It gets a lot of really interesting cool tricks, like the Arcane Trickster, but I think the Arcane Trickster gets more tricks, gets more interesting things to do. Doesn't even come close to the Phantom in damage. Still good damage though. I think I am gonna go high high A tier, like highest A tier. It could easily be S tier. All of these could actually honestly be like reasonably S tier. There's a pretty surprising gap between the Rune Knight and the Peace Cleric. Like, and the Peace Cleric's really good, but like it's not more than average. You know, it's not more than average. Whereas like the Twilight Cleric is one of the better ones. All of these are like definitely in the top range of their classes easily, whereas these are quite average. Yeah, anyway. So that is the Soul Knife. Very, very solid subclass. Very cool. Alright, on to the Sorcerers. We're starting off with the Aberrant Mind. So, for starters, you start off with additional spell list, which is something that I don't think any other sorcerer gets. If you do, it's quite rare. Like you get like one for Divine Soul Sorcerer, and I think sometimes you get a couple extra spells. But like it's quite rare to get like a full-on spell list, and they're just prepared. So like extra prepared spells for a sorcerer is a big deal because that's the biggest hurdle with sorcerers is that you just have no prepared spells. And also, interestingly, you can replace any of these spells with a divination or enchantment, any divination or enchantment spell that you want from sorcerer, warlock, or wizard. I'll talk about a couple of spells I like later. So the spell list itself is quite decent. I think all of these are good. Dissonant Whispers is a really solid one. Sifadar has a lot of uses, I think, from what I can remember. Calm Emotions is great. It can like end encounters before it starts, or like give you a big advantage in them. Starting out, Take Thoughts has its uses. Hunger for the Sending, It Black Tangles, Summon Aeration. I'm not sure how Separation goes. I think it's another one that I kind of like need time using to probably appreciate. But reading the stat block, it looks quite good. It looks like it'll be useful. Whereas have Telepathic Bond, I've talked about it. I really like it, and Telekinesis is always a good spell. You get abilities down here that make them a lot better. Actually, I'm not sure. Sorcerers don't get rituals, do they? So actually, whereas Telepathic Bond's probably not that good here, because it's good as a ritual. But, so really solid just to have extra spells. That makes it a really good spellcaster just straight off the bat. You get Telepathic Speech. So there's some weird rules to this one, but this is an infinite resource. You can just the bonus action get telepathy with someone. So interestingly, it lasts. I think it's your level minutes. It lasts for a number of minutes equal to your sorcerer level. So that's like a couple of minutes, right? It's 1 minute at this point, but you can go you can go a number of miles away equal to your charisma modifier. So like probably about like 3 miles or 4 miles at the start, and it lasts a minute. And even like when you get to like 20th level and it's like 20 minutes,
and they can get to 5 miles away. Like you couldn't get that far away if you were trying in that time. um, I know there are like teleports and things like that, but it's weird rules to talk about. Like, why do they make it so big, and also like based, like why do they scale it? I feel like, I wouldn't be excited when my telepathy went from 3 miles to 4 miles. When it only lasts a couple of minutes. But telepathy's good. Especially like at range over a period of time. That's quite good. Yeah, the minutes is a little low. Like, I mean, it would be nice to have more, but it's beggars can't be choosers. It's pretty cool. So Psionic Sorcery, this is really cool. So normally you can turn your sorcery points into spell slots, but it's worth more sorcery points than the spell slots are. So you can use 5 sorcery points to get a 3rd level spell. For this, you can use 3 sorcery points to cast a 3rd level spell as long as it's from this feature. Which is much cheaper. It means you can cast heaps more spells than any other sorcerer. So you can cast a lot of spells and you've got a bigger variety of spells. So it's really quite a good spellcasting sorcerer. If you want to focus on your spellcasting, then this is pretty great. And another thing, you get Mind Sliver, which pretty much it's an intelligence save. They take a bit of damage, a d6, it's scaling, I think. But their next save is at disadvantage, and normally quite a good I was blanking. Quite a good meta magic is Hide and Spell, which means they save at disadvantage. But and it's worth 3 sorcery points. But you can quicken Mind Sliver for 2 sorcery points if they fail the int save, and int is probably the best save to target because a lot of things are just really stupid and can't get intelligence saves. If they get that and they've got disadvantage on the next save, then it's only worth 2 sorcery points. Although I'm pretty sure Hide and Spell works with AoEs and Mind Sliver doesn't. So there we go. Yeah, if you're just if you're wanting to use Hide and Spell. Also at 6th level you get resistance to psychic damage, which again rare damage type, but also it's a resistance, and when it comes up it'll be awesome. It'll be fantastic. And advantage on saving throws against Charmed and Frightened. Lots of abilities are like also becoming resistant or like relying on Charmed and Frightened, but yeah, advantage is good in anything to protect against these because they can be debilitating as hell. 14th level, you get pretty much like a bunch of options you can do that are just super nice, all for only 1 sorcery point. So you can see invisible creatures in 60 feet, definitely worth 1 sorcery point. You get a flying speed equal to your walking speed, which is well worth it in a lot of cases. You get a swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed, and you can breathe on water. When it comes up, it's pretty niche, but when it comes up, like absolutely worth it. You'll be so glad you have it. And also, this is a weird one. Your body and equipment, while recovering, become slimy and pliable. You can move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing. And you can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical threats and being grappled. So, I think this could have some really interesting uses. Like, if you're in combat, there'll be like cracks in the wall or something that won't be big enough for you to slip into it, and so like, you could just chill out in there. I don't know how spellcasting would work and things like that if you're in 1 inch of space, but you're not squeezing, so like, I assume that means you've got freedom of movement mostly. So this is odd. I think this could actually be really, really busted, but I don't really know what to think about it. And finally, Warping Implosion. This is also another pretty odd ability. So pretty much you get an action teleport of 120 feet, which is really big, really solid teleport. And whenever you leave, everyone within 30 feet makes a saving throw, if they fail, they like come towards the spot that you were. and also take 3d10 force damage, which is like decent, but I mean it's 18th level, so meh. The it also has friendly fire, so it could be pretty bad. And 30 feet is a big area, right? Like you're quite likely to have friends in that area. And this can be really good combined with other spells that like have area denial sort of stuff. You know, like what comes to mind is like Cloud Kill. Cloud Kill probably wouldn't actually be that good, but those types of spells, really good. If you've got like the Wizard following straight up afterwards, you could like pull everyone in and then like immediately put them in a wall of force, and then you've just got everyone there. But like it bunches everyone up, which could be super useful. But I'm like trying to think of ways that'll be useful that you can take control of, and none of them make that much sense. Like, it's not a spell, so you could quicken something. You could quicken like and I think quicken would work really well with it, but most of the spells I'm thinking of you can't cast 120 feet away. Well, I don't think you don't have to teleport 120 feet away. So you could use that, bunch everyone up, and then use your quickened like I don't know. Well, like everyone's bunched up, so AoEs are all AoEs are good. But then particularly ones that will like keep them there, and then you can fill up later with a bunch of really good stuff. Or you have like a web down. I mean, you'd have something much higher than a web, but I think you get like Evans Blake Tentacles or Hunger of Fadar. I get these two confused. One of those two it's got like a really good area denial thing. You could have that down. You probably have to be in it, but like you get that down. Oh, you could fly above it. Oh, it could be really good with flying. Yeah, because then they fall into something, so they take the falling damage, and also take whatever the area denial thing is. Yeah, it's an odd one, but there's definitely uses for it, and it's interesting. Whether it's worth 5 sorcery points, I mean, you can cast a 5th level spell with that, so that's questionable. Yeah, it's not an ability. I like it though. So how we rank it? I'm pretty tempted to make an A+ level because I think it's definitely higher than a B, easily. But I don't know if it's quite in league of all of these. So I'm gonna leave it for now. Let's see how it goes. Alright. That is the Aberrant Mind. Now moving on to the Clockwork Soul. Alright, Clockwork Soul Sorcerer. You start off like the Aberrant Soul, with getting a bunch of extra spells, which is really cool to see, because yeah, again, sorcerers don't get a lot of spells, and that's definitely a big advantage. I think the spell list in general is quite a bit worse, but you get Wall of Force, which is the best 5th level spell. I don't know how good Summon Construct is, not yet, and then there's some okay ones. Dispel Magic is obviously pretty good. Aid, I've talked about that earlier, and Lesser Restoration is always good. I think it's a bit worse than the other one, and I think you don't get quite as many good options to change it with the Aberration and Transmutation, which you get from Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. One thing I'll talk about later, I think it's really good to switch out one of these for Armor of Agathis. It works really well for one of the other abilities that otherwise I think is just really bad. Okay, so moving on, another thing you get is that pretty much you can cancel out advantage or disadvantage of another creature number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, which is pretty cool. It's not overly powerful. It could be effective. at this point it's twice a day, which is not a lot. Later on it's quite a bit more, but yeah, I'm not too big of a fan of this move, this ability. It's alright. Then 6th level, you can add a ward like between 1 and 5 sorcery points, and then when someone gets attacked, they can use a number of d8s, depending on the number of sorcery points you did, to just reduce the damage. The way it's worded, it doesn't seem like they just stay, and you can just keep rolling them. I think it should, because like otherwise it's just awful. Even now it's not really that good, because I just think it's too expensive. Like the d8s, a d8 is not that much. It's like 4.5 on average, and when you're talking about 4.5 hit points for an entire sorcery point, there's much more interesting and much better things you can do. Like, the exception to that is if you take Armor of Agathis, if you swap out either Alarm or Protection for maybe Evil and Good. I mean, either one, not amazing. Probably Alarm. That's more of like a wizard thing. You can pretty much just reduce all the damage while your Armor of Agathis is dealing damage. It's pretty good. Even then, I don't even know if it's like super worth it. I feel like there's more interesting and useful stuff you can do with your sorcery points, but it's an option. It's a way I thought of making a pretty bad sounding ability. Okay. Trace of Water. You enter the state, so you can't have advantage against you, which is pretty okay. And also any ability roll, check or saving throw you make is like an auto 10, pretty much. The thing is though, this would be really good on a lot of classes. As a sorcerer, you're not really making a lot of attack rolls, or like mainly attack rolls, like in combat. And then the ability checks and saving throws also aren't. You wouldn't be doing too many of those. Saving throws in particular are probably the best part of this, especially like concentration saves. That's like mostly why you'd use this. Yeah. So like the once a day is it's solid. It's nice, but I almost would never spend 5 sorcery points on it. That's like way too much for what you get out of it. Finally, Clockwork Cavalade. It's kind of like a AoE Dispel Magic. It's a 30-foot cube, which is a pretty big area originating from you. And it gets rid of all magic of your choice. Or like any, wait, what's the actual wording? Every spell of 6th level or lower ends on a creature or object of your choice in the cube. Yeah, so it's a bit less general than Dispel Magic, but like you can just absolutely destroy a spellcaster with this, and if there's like a whole bunch of like negative spell effects on your allies and positive spell effects on your enemies, you can like get rid of so much from this. There's also a very good, or very solid at least, heal of 100 hit points that you can divide between everyone in the cube. It is 18th level, so it's like this is almost as well. Actually, yeah, people would have not Power Word Heal, the better one. Mass Heal, yeah. Which is like 700 hit points divided by everyone, so that's like a much better heal than this, but like, it's still really good. I could see this being worth 7, mostly if you've got like a ton of abilities going on. It would definitely be worth 7, but otherwise it's probably a little lower. I wouldn't even be regularly using this with like 4. Yeah, overall, it just doesn't really feel like the Clockwork gives you a lot. It's pretty disappointing. Overall, yeah, it's got some solid stuff, but it's far below Divine Soul and Shadow Sorcerer. Oh yeah, I never said. I think Aberrant Soul doesn't quite stack up to like the other two, but it's still competitive with them. I think it's the best sorcerer other than those two. Yeah, Clockwork leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah, I think it's one of the worst sorcerers. And I think it goes pretty solidly in the C tier. It's above Mercy, it's above Watcher. It's probably below Fey Wanderer. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Alright. So, the Fathomless Warlock. Starting out with the spell list, it's not really that good. I quite like Bigsby's Hand. I think that's really good. There's a lot of like water themed ones. A lot are okay, but they're the kind of things that don't scale very well. So you kind of want to switch them out as soon as you like pretty soon after you get to the next stage of your Warlock spellcasting. Kind of cards also quite good. And summon elementals good. Oh wait, it's not contra elemental. I don't know if this will be good or not. Yeah. You also get to summon a tentacle. It'll deal. You can use it as a bonus action. It'll deal D8 damage. And it reduces movement by 10 feet. So that can be nice. It's probably not overly common, overly useful. Yeah, you get a proficiency bonus a day. So, all right. When it levels up like 2d8, it's good that you get consistent damage. Oh no, I assume that it works with Hex as well because it's you making the mana your spell attack. So it's pretty good damage. It's a pretty good damage increase. Yeah, you might even be out damaging Hexblade for like a very small amount. Come out with Eldritch Blast and Hex. Yeah, a little bit. That won't last though. Gaining swimming speed of 40 feet and you can breathe underwater is well, like it's niche, but if you're playing a pretty like ocean heavy campaign, the Fathomless gets a lot better. So you, like moves like this make a lot more sense. Like in a normal campaign, this will come up every so often, and it's really nice when it does if it does come up like that. But otherwise it's quite niche. Here at 6th level, you get Oceanic Soul. Resistance to cold damage is solid. This I've read this so many times, I still don't understand it. When you are fully submerged, any creature that is also fully submerged can understand your speech and you can understand theirs. So it's like you can talk to people underwater. Like, I can't. I suppose it'll be right if you're underwater a bit. Yeah. If you've got other people playing these subclasses, a lot of subclasses have been getting telekinesis, telepathy, so that works a lot better there. Also at 6th level, you can like do a damage reduction as a reaction with your tentacles from 2d8, a d8, and then 2d8 at 10th level. Which is solid. I've talked about damage reduction, but it's not a bunch. But like, you get this for free every round, and the sorcerer had to pay a sorcery point to get the d8, and that's stupid. Like, it really just goes to show how bad that was, like having to do sorcery points for it. But d8's decent, 2d8's decent. It's not gonna be like game changing, but it's every round. So like, yeah. Imagine getting a kill wounds without the plus wisdom like every round. It's effectively the same thing. But I mean, it's not crazy, but like yeah. So the grasping tentacles. This is pretty cool. You get Evan's Black tentacles. It doesn't count it, like you get it for free pretty much. And you get a free casting of it. But importantly, your concentration can't be broken, and you also get temporary hit points. All around quite solid, and it's quite a good spell. In particular, if you've got the Eldritch Blasts that move people around, like Grasp of Vidar and or all that good stuff, you can move people into the Evert's Black Tentacles. So if they like come out, you just put them back in. It's yeah, it can be pretty brutal, and you can just continually get them in here. So it's really effective if you do that. Fathomless Plunge, you can teleport up to, I think it's a mile away to a body of water that you know. Just as an action, and all your friends as well, 4 or 5 other willing creatures. So if you've got more than a party of 6, it can be a bit difficult to deal with. But yeah, this is a really good to get a dodge ability, but it also can be quite good just like in water combats, because if the combat's happening on water, you can teleport anywhere you want in the combat, and you can teleport everyone there. And it's every short rest. I didn't actually realize that. So yeah, you can use it quite a bit. So it's a lot better if you know you're in a water combat, water campaign. Outside of that, it's definitely okay. It's got some good stuff. It's a decent amount of damage and things, but I think it doesn't really give you a lot. Like it's pretty on par with the Archfey and the old one, and it doesn't even touch some of the higher level warlocks. I think it's a below average C. I think it's better than Clockwork, so yeah, I'll go there. Okay, so the Genie Warlock. This is probably my favorite Warlock after this point. I still love the Hexblade, but it's super interesting. So look at the spell list. You get like a universal one, you get one on the specific genie that you pick. So the general ones, Phantasmal Force and Phantasmal Killer are both really good. Creation's nice. Create food and water. I'll get to Wish. I mean, they're average. So looking at the specific genie spells, I think Dow's the best. Sanctuary's okay. Spike Growth is really cool, like really good with Eldritch Blast with the movement invocations. Like you can just cheese greater them. Like you move them 10 feet forward, you move them 10 feet back, and they just take tons and tons of damage. Mountain Stone's okay. Stone Shape's bad, but oh wait, sorry, that's I'm thinking Stone Skin. Stone Shape's I don't really know much about it. Willow Stone's really good. So like yeah, Spike Growth when you're passing their level, it's pretty good. It doesn't scale unfortunately, but I'd be tempted to cast it with a 3rd level spell slot if you have the Eldritch Blast stuff. And Willow Stone's a really good 5th level spell. The Genie, I think I don't think it's a great. They don't scale super well. I mean, Greater Invisibility is good. I don't really like any of those. Freddy, that's your like typical blast one. Notably, it gets Fireball, but Fireball doesn't scale well, so you only want to be using this, level 5 and 6, maybe 7 and 8, and you want to switch it out. Same with pretty much every spell on this list. Merit gets some spells I like. I really like Fog Cloud, but you won't be keeping it later, unless you multi-class something with 1st level spell slots. That you can use for Fog Cloud. But you'll probably get Fog Cloud from them anyway. Sleet Storm, I'm a big fan of. It doesn't scale well either. And Cone of Cold, I'm a big fan of as well. It does a lot of damage. So yeah, overall, I think Dow definitely gets the best spell list here. There's other abilities that I think Dow just the best one here. I like the Married. If you like blasting, I'm not really too big on blasting, but Ifriti's quite good. I think the Genie's probably the worst off. Yeah. So the fact that you get access to Wish, that you can pick it as a Mystic Arcanum, makes 17th level Warlocks, Genie Warlocks, the best Warlock. no question. Like Hexblade, Hexblade just so much worse off. Just Wish is that good of a spell. I think there's other reason. Like 14th level Genie, I think it's actually above Warlock or Hexblade already. But I'll get to that. So you also get a Genie's Vessel, so something like an oil lamp or whatever. Typical stuff you'd expect for a Genie to be in. So one thing you get inside the vessel, there's like a big room, 20-foot radius, 20-foot high, that you can kind of do whatever you want with. You know, it's said it's like comfortable, it's always comfortable temperature, things like that. You can hear outside while you're in there, and you can remain in a number of hours equal to twice your presence bonus. So starting at 4th level. So notably, if you play an elf, you can get a full long rest in here. You can exit early if you die, kind of a lot of stuff. So you can only enter once per long rest. So that's another good reason to go for like an elf, is you get that long rest while you're in there, so you can just enter again. But there's a lot of really good uses for this. So one, it's just a really, really good place to store like treasure and things like that. Because it's an extra dimensional space, I'm not sure if it moves along with the material plane. I think it does, but if it doesn't, you can actually use Glyph of Warding in there and set up a bunch of buffs. So, because the Glyph of Warding would remain in the same place, so like you have like a command word, and then when you say it, like the Glyph of Warding casts like haste and I don't know, enlarge, reduce. My mind's going blank at the moment, but like you can get a bunch of buffs on concentration free on like a fighter or something like that, and just have it massively buffed up for like free, pretty much. Just like in an action. I'm not entirely sure if that works though. Some other really good uses, if you combine it. Sorry, just adjusting. If you combine it with a familiar, I think Pact of the Chain works really well with this. But combined with a familiar, you can like attach, and if you've got something your familiar can carry, especially like a ring is probably the best here. And you just like chuck it on like an owl's talon or something, or more likely probably like an imp or something. But you change the shape of the imp. You can effectively fly really fast. Like you can travel as fast as your familiar would travel, because it can carry you and all your stuff fine. And you can carry all the heavy and difficult to get around stuff that your party needs as well. Another thing is like spying. Another thing, also with the familiar, like you get familiars that can go invisible. That includes equipment. Includes equipment. So if they're wearing a ring with you in it, you can go invisible. And you can just go in and listen anywhere because you can listen to everything outside around you. There are a couple other uses maybe. Oh, it's a really safe place to have a short rest, as well. It's just a safe place to go. You could probably, if you're like in really, really dire straits, you can probably go in there and like if it's just a ring or something like that, there's a pretty good chance whatever's attacking you would ignore it. And if not, if you keep it on your familiar, you can like disappear into familiar and then they can get out of dodge. So a really great ability, like a really, really diverse range of uses. I'm sure you'll just think of more the more you get used to it. Also on each of your turns you can deal an extra damage equal to your proficiency bonus, so that's the same as Hexblade's Curse. But Hexblade's Curse you can do it multiple times. And the type is dependent on your genie. Bludgeoning is the worst here, but I think later on it balances out. And also, like, this is not that much damage, and it's not that big of a deal. And this is where the genie is probably the best. Cold's pretty good, and then fire's a little bit worse than that. Vessel's got your save, DC, and like Warlock level plus proficiency bonus and hit points, so not that much. But like it could probably survive a hit or two if that's what someone's going for. They probably won't be though. It's a weird thing to attack. And also you can perform an arrow along ceremony. So I'm pretty sure the way this works, the way it's worded, means that if you go into your bottle and you have your short rest and then you come out and then later you do the hour-long ceremony to make a replacement, because it's a new trinket, you might be able to actually enter it again. You might also be able to perform a ceremony inside the bottle, so like when you finish your short rest, you make a new one, you exit your bottle, and you can go in it again. I'm not sure if this works though. It doesn't seem like it's you should be able. It doesn't seem like that's the way it's intended to be used. Anyway, moving on to elemental gifts. So this is a big plus on the Dao. So you have resistance to your damage type of your patron. So bludgeoning is a big thing here. Resistance to bludgeoning is awesome. And again, thunder's probably the worst here. Fire's pretty good. Cold's and thunder. Also, you can give you a concentration-free fly for 10 minutes, just as a bonus action. That's really good. Flight's always good. A lot of subclasses getting flight, which is very nice. Sanctuary Vessel. Now all your friends can come into your bottle with you. That means your entire party can travel as fast as you're familiar, which is really fast. Which is pretty sick. And then like no chance of random encounters, or barely any anyway. It's really safe. That's nothing interesting. Also, you get 10-minute short rest while in there, which is really good, especially with like bonus action classes. It is a shame that you only get to enter it once a day, and this is where the ceremony to make a new one is particularly useful. And also, you get your proficiency bonus and extra hit points, which is like fine. It's it's whatever. At 14th level you get Limited Wish, which is such a good capstone. It's really good. So you can pretty much copy any spell that's 6th level or lower. Spell can be from any class list, and you don't meet the requirements, and doesn't include components. Simply takes, so it is cancelled out for a D4 long rest, which I think is pretty cool. It's like can't use it every day, but you can use it a lot at the time. Some really good ones are Summon Greater Steed, because that's like a permanent effect. Also, you get like Revivify, or whatever the 5th level, I think it's Raise Dead, without any spell components is really nice. And like, you can get Contingency as well, so Contingency and find another spell that would work well with your Contingency. That's a really good one. There's also like Wall of Force in combat, things like that. You'll absolutely find uses for this. This is a fantastic ability. It's so versatile. So I think this puts you well ahead of the Hexblade once you get it. But overall, I think I might be a bit biased because I really love the features. I honestly think it deserves S tier. I don't think it's overall as good as the Hexblade, but it's easily better than any other Warlock subclass. It could go highest of A+, but I think it's above the Soul Knife, above these guys. I'm happy putting it there. It's my list. Okay, so on to the final one for Wizard, which is the the Order of the Scribes. Unfortunately, we're ending on a real big downer ending. It's this thing sucks. I think this is the first bad, actually like bad wizard subclass ever. I think even like the worst wizard subclass before this was actually quite good. Either the necromancer or the transmuter wizard. This is just bad. Yeah. So you get a quill that doesn't require ink. Very, very cool. Obviously that'll come up, you know, most of the time. Time you can spend to copy the time you spend to copy a spell is 2 minutes per spell level, which is way less than the standard. But the part that makes copying scrolls hard is almost never the time. Like as soon as you get a little bit of downtime, like you could just copy a bunch. It's not normally like you're so busy that you never get the time to copy the spells. It's normally the gold, if anything, that's keeping you from copying spells. Yeah, this doesn't give any bonus, whereas like the other schools had Savant, like at least the Savant ability is at half the gold cost. It also half the time cost, but yeah. And also you can erase anything you write with the quill with the Wave of the Feathers bonus action. That's not. Who cares? Awakened Spellbook. Your Spellbook becomes awakened. It's got like a personality. Even like it's quirky, but I don't. This is kind of like a boring concept as well. Like having like another NPC that you're like that you can get your DM to like roleplay and is like a part of you or something like that, like a part of your class features, is usually quite cool. But I just can't imagine this being interesting. Like I don't know. I think it's quite boring, as well as just bad mechanically. Okay, so with the spellbook, you can use the spellbook as a spellcasting focus. Like it doesn't really matter. That doesn't change anything. So this is one thing that's interesting. That sounds quite good, and I would like with other things. So when you cast a spell with spell slot, you can replace the damage with another type. This is with the spellbook, and you need one with the same level. So changing the damage type is pretty cool. It is quite good. But because of the restrictions, you need to invest quite a bit in blasting, which I think is the worst thing that a wizard can do. But even then, there's like the evocation wizard is a far superior blaster to this. This is literally the only ability he gets that would benefit it. And because you need to have multiple different blast spells each level for it to be effective. Like not only do you need to take Fireball, you also need to take like is it Cool Lightning or Lightning Rod or something? To change that Fireball to lightning damage, and then if you want to change it to more types, you have to take more blasts at third level, and then when you get fourth level spells that you want to blast with and change type with, so you need to get multiple fourth level blast spells, and it just you need to invest a lot into it, and that means you can't use the other things that a wizard are good at, and you're not even good at this side of things. Like all you can do is change the damage type. Also, you can instantly cast a ritual once a day, which is pretty cool. I think that's a cool ability. It's not overly useful, but it's nice to have. Yeah, it's kind of whatever. Also, you can like instantly copy a book. Like you don't need to worry about losing your spell book. But if that's something you're worried about, don't play a wizard. If that's a possibility, like you losing your spell book just ends your career, man. Like don't. Yeah. Manifest Mind. We. I forgot what this did.
Okay, so the main thing about this is that you can go through your mind. You can have its vision. It's got dark vision, so that's nice. But like, I think the best thing that this does is that you can cast spells through its space. And so that does mean you can like go quite a bit away from the battlefield. Or like you have a bit of an advantage in like complex environments. You know, you can be in multiple places at once effectively. But I mean, it's not improving on what you're doing. It's just stopping like a couple sometimes harder to deal with things from makes them a little easier to deal with. But it's not. It's not a big deal. It's really not. This is probably its best ability, and it's average at best. Like it's okay. Finally, you can make a spell scroll each day. See, first or second level, and when you make it, you can cast it one level above, and it takes an action, and it doesn't use a spell slot. That's certainly. I think this is okay. Like, but it's pretty much like a free bad third level spell, which a 10th level was, like it definitely doesn't make up for what it's missed out on. Some really good spells to go with it. Blindness Deafness, you can target multiple people if you upcast it, and same with Hold Person. It's really good. So they're good for upcasting. Also, like Web and Mirror Image are also good options, just like good second level spells that are, say, worth casting. Those would be my top 4 picks for it. Don't use a first level spell. Why would you do that? Yeah. The crafting spells thing, like, I don't think I've ever done this, even though it would totally be useful. I'm not sure. Maybe this will be useful. It depends on your table and what's up, but it's never gonna impact your game too much. I mean, like, you need to know the spells, so there's not much point of getting scrolls of them for the amount of investment you have to put into get them anyway. All right, one with the word. So basically, advantage on Arcana checks is nice. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, you do Arcana checks all the time as a wizard, so that's nice. But the main thing you're looking at is if you die, you get rid of 3d6 worth of level spells from your spell book that are gone for a d6 long rest. And that's instead of dying. So you also can only do this once a day. Getting rid of spells is like your main thing. Or like spells are your main thing as a wizard, so like getting rid of them is a big deal. You really are shooting yourself in the foot by getting rid of spells, but I mean it'll be worth it to save your life. But it's kind of like a lot of this class feels like it's planning for the worst, and the worst is like, and it doesn't even do that right. And it doesn't do anything for like when everything's fine. Like you probably have a lot of spells that you wouldn't cast anyway, but like it's worth it to save your life, but it's just not fun. Like you're getting rid of spells that makes it versatile. It just makes it less fun and less interesting, and it's also not that good. So yeah, I think this is easily the worst subclass been added, and you might have been wondering why I had all the way down to F here when I've only been using these ones, but it's because yeah, this needs to go. Like E's too good for it. It's just so bad, and it's such a disappointment. I was like so excited for a wizard, new wizard subclass. Like wizards is my favorite class. It's just bad. It's just really shitty. Yeah. Okay, so overall, how do I think everything adds up? I think Genie is definitely the worst of S tier. I don't think I will make an A plus. It's just like Aberrant Mind is a bit worse than these guys, and it's a good bit better than these guys. So like there's a bit of a gap there. Like it could have its own tier and have these lower, but I don't think that's necessary. I think this order's pretty right. Maybe Phantom goes before here, depending on your rules and things. I think Soul Knife is the best of these, but all of these four are really, really fantastic. They're close enough to S tier. Like they're definitely some of the best options you could play within the class. Aberrant Mind's really, really solid. It's got some really interesting stuff. It's a really good spellcaster. Peace and Wildfire. Yeah, I think these are about right. Wildfire I'm still really uncertain about. Beast might be a little high. I think this is maybe like Wildfire is definitely above average, and then Beast is like kind of a bit below average. Maybe I should have these punished here, but whatever. Yeah, but like these are all fine. Beast, Armor, and Swarmkeeper. You'll have a good time playing them and not be too, I think, far behind what you'd expect from a stronger subclass. They're all decent, but you have better options basically. Here we kind of get into the bad options. Wild Magic still is pretty decent at low levels, but it really, really falls off like quite quickly, and it's so interesting. Like fighting with it, I think it would be really, really fun to play with, but just not strong. The Fathomless, again, like if you've got a water-based campaign, it'll probably easily be in the B tier, high beam even, but it's doesn't have it at base to get there. Yeah, it just doesn't have too much going on. Fey Wanderer, similar thing. Like all of its abilities are a little bit off. Don't work too well. Yeah, Clockwork Soul would be this low. Watches I'll put under there. Mercy and Astral Self, yeah, lowest of the low tiers. That fits. I think Mercy is a lot better than Astral Self, but it's also Mercy is definitely worse than these. So it is interesting, and Astral Self's not that good, and then yeah, Scribes is very bad. I'm pretty happy with how this all looks. That has been all of Tasha's subclasses ranked. If you watch the whole video, Jesus Christ, good on you. I don't even think I'm going to watch this whole video. This is kind of just a bit of fun that I wanted to do mostly for myself. But if people are into it, then yeah, I think that's really cool. I really enjoyed this process, so I'm pretty keen to make more content. Probably making like subclass builds, maybe looking at the feats, maybe looking at the spells. Spells is probably what I know best. So I think I could probably have a lot to say with spells. I also have some older D&D builds that could actually work a bit better with some of these. But I might start posting. Yeah, I'm also gonna do like a 10-minute version of this where I just pretty much what I just did, like go over why everything is where it is. Just as a faster option. Yeah, I see what the future holds. Thanks for watching.